You guys aren't going to believe this.
And you ain't black.
I don't know what I said.
The first time ever any...
What are you people? We're Americans.
We are Americans indeed. My name is Vincent. This is Middle America. You've got, this is a second episode of Middle America that we're filming today. You, dear listener, are either the luckiest human being on the planet or the least fortunate. Dear listener, what we're about to listen to is a back and forth between Mr. Tucker Carlson and a representative by the last name of Salazar. Hello, Rich Yonkers. Before I do that, I wanted to, hey, what's up, Michelle? I wanted to show you guys, give you a quick lesson in logic. Now, don't be angry at your brother. Don't be angry at your brother. But I wanted to give a quick lesson in logic. Here's the term, the genetic fallacy, also known as the fallacy of origins or the fallacy of virtue. It's a fallacy of irrelevance that is based solely on someone or something's history, origin, or source rather than its current meaning or context. Dear listener, if I post something from Jimmy Dore, the people that don't like Jimmy Dore say, he's a grifter. I say, well, what does that have to do with this specific argument, the specific meaning of this specific argument Jimmy's making? Irrelevant. Jimmy Dore's a grifter. I post something from Rising. Oh, they're neoliberal shills. Yeah, but what does that have to do with the specific argument that the folks in Rising are making? Dear listener, let's not commit the genetic fallacy. It does not matter who the information is coming from. What matters is whether or not the information is true. Now, that does not mean that we don't have biases. Of course we have biases. I said in the previous show that if you don't have biases, then you're not reasoning rationally. Because while biases can be a horrible way of settling on the truth on the back end, it is a very important means of initial self-protection. Shout out to Ben Moen. Ben Moen is in the house. What do I mean by that? Bias can function as initially as self-protection, but it is not a means by which you ascertain all objective reality. In other words, if a person comes to you and lies to you 99 times, and then they tell you there's a thief at the door, it would be right for you to be biased against them, to believe or to think to yourself, this fool is lying to me. That doesn't mean, however, you don't check the door. You see what I'm saying? So initially, biases many times work based on logic and reason, but you cannot ultimately deny objective truth or ultimate reality based on a bias. That's when bias becomes bad, when bias makes it so that you cannot be converted. So I say all the time, I have a bias, but I can be converted. And I think that's where most of us are. Having said that, many of you are biased against Tucker Carlson, and so am I. I believe that there are certain issues that Mr. Carlson has purposely misrepresented. And when those issues come up, we discuss them on Middle America. But as regards war and foreign policy, Mr. Carlson has actually been pretty consistent, namely saying, what the hell does this have to do with the United States interests? And he has been against war. And for that, I believe he should be commended. Now, that's neither here nor there, dear listener. The time has arrived. Mr. Carlson apparently clashed with a representative by the name of Miss Salazar. So let's check it out. Is that Thug Rose, Rich Yonkers? Okay, let's check this out. Tucker Carlson, let's do it.
So things are changing very fast. For weeks, leaders in Washington told us that an American-backed no-fly zone in Ukraine would be unwise because it would amount to an act of war against a nuclear-armed Russia.
Yeah, that's what Jen Psaki told the TikTokers earlier today. She actually said it would be bad for humanity, which shout out to Jen Psaki for that. Now, if only Miss Psaki would be consistent in her concern for humanity across the board, then we'd all be in good shape. But yeah, I think everybody's pretty much calibrated that a no-fly zone in Ukraine would be the start of World War III and unwise.
As you can see, those views have evolved a lot. But in fairness, Congresswoman Maria Salazar got there first. Salazar is a longtime news anchor from Miami who a little over a year ago was elected to Congress as a Republican. She now sits on the Foreign Affairs Committee. A week ago, a reporter from the Gray Zone asked Salazar what she thought of a no-fly zone. Here's what she said.
Holy smokes, the Gray Zone. Isn't that Aaron Mate's crew and all that? The Gray Zone? Shout out to the Gray Zone. Okay. Notice Mr. Carlson is going after a Republican. That's interesting. We continue.
Said.
Do you support a no-fly zone in Ukraine?
I support everything that has to do with punishing Vladimir Putin and helping the Ukrainians.
Wouldn't that mean direct conventional warfare with Russia?
I don't know what it will mean, but you know, freedom is not free.
So you don't know what a no-fly zone will mean. If you have to shoot down Russian planes, I mean.
Of course.
Yeah. You know, I constantly make reference to my friend, and my friend and I, we always go back and forth because he's one of these end of the world doomsday people, and I'm always like, bro, would you just chill out? The world's not going to end. Ain't nobody trying to do World War III. My last words is correct. What a strange thing for an elected official to say. I support anything that's designed to punish Vladimir Putin because the United States has the moral and the global authority over all the earth, dear listener, and we can punish people in our wrath. I'll strike down upon thee with furious anger. Then they will know that we are the lords of the world. We have the right to do that, dear listener. We punish Vladimir Putin by beginning World War III by initiating no-fly zones in Ukraine. Now, this woman is, I'm sorry, but she's out of her mind. Now, this is what happens, by the way, when you're not going to have to go to war, or your children aren't going to have to get deployed to war. You know, System of a Down said something to the effect of, why are the rich always fighting the war, but why do they always send the poor? This woman is a news anchor, a newscaster, and now she's calling for no-fly zones over Ukraine. Now, Mr. Zelensky's asking for that, which in my mind is a patently immoral request to make. But I understand why he would do it, considering he's the one that's being besieged by Mr. Putin. So it makes sense. It's a form of self-preservation. But for an American to co-sign any form of punishment against Vladimir Putin is absolute. First of all, it's hypocritical, but it's absolute nonsense. Go ahead. You could say whatever you want. As you know, Sadie, Middle America is a free speech environment. So let it fly, dear listener. Oh my God. We continue.
I don't know what it will mean, but you know freedom is not free. Now, we made fun of that answer last week when we...
I don't know what it'll mean. Yeah, I'm going to co-sign a no-fly zone. I don't know what it means, but freedom isn't free. Also known as, hey, if you have to crack a few omelets to make an egg, it is what it is. America.
Showed you that clip. But now what we mocked is the consensus in Washington. We don't know what's going to happen. We've got to do it immediately. That's the argument you're hearing. At this point, no one wants to say it out loud, but it is true. At this point, a shooting war with Russia seems inevitable. How could war with Russia not be inevitable? Virtually everyone with power is for it. We remain against it. We think that joining a war in Eastern Europe will hurt this country, though to be clear, when and if that war... starts, we will be praying passionately for America's total victory. Unlike so many in the foreign policy establishment, we love this country above all, and we mean it. But in the meantime, while the United States is still technically at peace, we thought it'd be worth asking people who are calling for war if they have considered in detail what a war would.
Tucker Carlson has a very funny definition of peace. Tucker, we're occupying Syria. We're in the Horn of Africa. Everybody saw the nightmarish video about 2 years ago with the Green Beret fellas who got ambushed by the it was Shabab, I believe, over there in Africa. We're assisting in the proxy war in Yemen. We had DevGru operators, one of whom died after Trump's first green light, is one of his first. So Tucker has a strange definition of what peace is. We're at war all over the planet, Earth, Tucker. but he's talking about this particular war he wants us to stay out of, even though we've been arming these people for years. We continue.
Mean for this country. Congresswoman Maria Salazar was gracious enough to accept our invitation to come on the show. We're grateful she did. She joins us tonight. Congresswoman, thanks so much for coming on.
She showed up. Okay.
Of course. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, yes. So since you have called for war with Russia, how do you think that war, once it begins, would play out?
I think that's a hypothetical question. I think that we should concentrate, Tucker, in what Zelensky asked Congress today.
Hypothetical question. So now, Tucker, I mean, if you're being super technical, she did not call for war with Russia, but she did say shoot down Russian planes. And since all of us believe that Putin is just a stark, raving, crazy madman, he's insane, he's a mad scientist, Dr. Evil, we know that if we shoot down Russian planes, that will necessarily lead to jihad. We know that, right? Can we agree? Because Putin's a psychopath. He's got no restraint. He wants to take over the world. He wants to reestablish the Soviet Union. So she said on camera, yeah, let's shoot down some Russian planes. So that is de facto calling for a war. But she's saying, well, it's speculative. Huh? It's speculative as to whether or not we shot down Russian planes. If we shot down Russian planes, that a war would ensue? Huh? Okay, we continue.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry because I can't. No, and I'm in no way trying to cut you off. But I can't let you allot over that. You said we should shoot down Russian planes. That's of course war. Since you've called for that, and you are a member of Congress. I think. Well, you just said on the tape we played.
That was but that was taken out of context because I said, of course, that I know what that means. That interview was not very well conducted, and that's why I'm here, because I want to clarify my position. Okay. And my position is that we should not take the no-fly zone off the table. But before that, that's two. We need to do one. And one is to give Zelensky exactly what he's asking for. No troops on the ground. Let's give him the MiGs and the S-300s, what he needs to defend his own airspace. So he will create his own no-fly zone. Because
we haven't given the Ukrainians enough weapons, and our NATO allies haven't given them enough weapons. They need more. I don't see materially how that eventually keeps us out of a war, but we continue.
And that's what I think we should have done months ago. It's embarrassing that this guy, this president, who is under the bullets, has come to Congress to beg for us to give him something that we should have done a long time ago.
Okay,
that's my position.
Let me be clear. When you say we should give President Zelensky what he's asking for, he demanded today, I think you were there, that the United States enforce the no-fly zone.
Correct.
So you are for denying him that.
Well, but he also said, and then we can give you alternatives. So since we know that that should not be taken off the table, and I repeat it, I do believe that we should go to plan.
I disagree, Your Grace. A no-fly zone enforcement should absolutely, positively be taken off of the table. I don't know what she is talking about, but that should absolutely be taken off the table. I don't know anybody who disagrees with that. And dear listener, let me just review a couple things. This is according to whitehouse.gov, okay? Here, let's do the screen share so that we don't have to keep copying and pasting. Here is what we have done for our friends over there in Ukraine. Here we go. Check this out. Hopefully you guys can see it. Fact sheet. This is a .gov, so this is not, hopefully, my friends don't, my own flesh and blood. Hopefully my friends don't accuse me of being a Russian shill for what I'm about to read you. President Biden today, this is 16 March 2022. President Biden today announced an additional $800 million in security assistance to Ukraine, bringing the total U.S. security assistance committed to Ukraine to $1 billion in just the past week, and a total of $2 billion since the start of the Biden administration. So since we haven't even hit the halfway mark yet, I believe, of the Biden administration, and we've already given $2 billion to these folks, specifically for jihad. The new $800 million assistance package includes 800 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, 2,000 Javelin, 1,000 light anti-armor weapons, and 6,000 AT-4 anti-armor system, 100 tactical unmanned aerial systems, those are drones, 100 grenade launchers, 5,000 rifles, 1,000 pistols, 400 machine guns, and 400 shotguns, over 20 million rounds of small arms and ammunition and grenade launcher and mortar rounds, 25,000 sets of body armor, and 25,000 helmets. In addition to the weapons listed above, previous United States assistance committed to Ukraine includes over 600 Stinger anti-aircraft systems, approximately 2,600 Javelin anti-armor systems, 5 Mi-17 helicopters, 3 patrol boats, 4 counter-artillery and counter-unmanned aerial system tracking radars, 4 counter-mortar radar systems, 200 grenade launchers and ammunition, 200 shotguns and 200 machine guns, nearly 40 million rounds of small arms ammunition, and over 1 million grenade, mortar, and artillery rounds. We're not done yet, dear listener. 70 high-mobility, multi-purpose wheeled vehicles and other vehicles. Secure communications, electronic warfare detection systems, body armor, helmets, and other tactical gear. Military medical equipment to support treatment and combat evacuation. Explosive ordnance disposal and demining equipment. And satellite imagery and analysis capability. In addition to the U.S.-produced short-range air defense systems the Ukrainians have been using to great effect, the United States has also identified and is helping the Ukrainians acquire additional longer-range systems on which Ukraine's forces are already trained, as well as additional munitions for those systems. The United States continues to expedite the authorization and facilitation of additional assistance to Ukraine from our allies, that's probably NATO. At least 30 countries. How many countries are in NATO? 30! At least 30 countries have provided security assistance to Ukraine since the Russian invasion began. And before. In 2022, the Department of State authorized third-party transfers of defensive equipment from more than 14 countries, a number that continues to grow as allies and partners increase support to Ukraine. But according to Mr. Zelensky and this young lady, that is not enough. We need more weapons to Ukraine. We need more billions sent to Ukraine. We need also no-fly zones over Ukraine to punish Vladimir Putin.
So things are changing very fast.
Very
you are for denying him that.
Well, but he also said, and then we can give you alternatives. So since we know that that should not be taken off the table, and I repeat it,
always and everywhere, especially for the U.S. government or one of its elected representatives, act on behalf of the core interests of the United States government. It's really super simple. So if the United States is providing weapons...
Let me just tell you now that you said that.
Hold on.
Okay.
If the United States is providing weapons to one side in a war, how is that not participating in the war?
Listen, let me just backtrack and say that you say that we're supposed to be representing the American people. I represent District Number 27, where you have millions of Cuban Americans.
Answer the question, ma'am. Hey, I used to live in the hood. And we had these cops that would patrol our school because our school was an absolute war zone. And one of the cops was a covert Latin king. So there was a rumble between the Latin kings and the Crips and the Bloods in my school. And my friend now Julio, he was a Latin king. So at lunchtime, he says, yo, Vinny, check this out, bruh. He opens his backpack and there's this long knife, like butcher knife, like horrible. And I said, how the hell did you get that in to the past the metal detectors? He said, Officer Sanchez gave it to me. Because Officer Sanchez was a Latin king. Dear listener, what do you think the law would have done with Officer Sanchez had Julio been caught for what he did with that knife a couple hours later? Oh, hey, it was me and a couple of we were just arming him. We had nothing to do with that gang war between the Bloods and the Crips. I had nothing to do with it. I mean, between the Bloods and the Latin Kings. I just gave the kid the weapon. This is the rationale. Did you hear? Did you hear the laundry list of weapons and munitions and the billions of dollars? I don't know if you guys know what billions of dollars are. We still have a problem with healthcare in this country, by the way, dear listener. That's still a problem. Correct. People are saying that the Russians, they're taking serious hits. Then, okay, great. Mashallah, tabaraka. I keep hearing how bravely the Ukrainians are fighting. Excellent. Mashallah. I'm sure Azov and the other folks are giving it the old college try. Then why do I need to give you $2 billion and institute a no-fly zone? Like these messages are contradicting each other, right? Like, aren't these messages contradicting each other? Are the Russians getting their ass kicked and they bit off more than they can chew? Or are Zelensky and those folks in desperate need of MiGs and all the rest of it? Which is it? They can't both be logically true at the same time, can they?
And I'm representing what we think. We know that we acquired peace through strength. Look at what happened in 1960. Fidel Castro and JFK.
Stop. I'm sorry.
JFK
I can't. I'm not gonna take the anti-communist lecture from anybody because, of course, I agree with you.
No.
And by the way,
I'm just
I
saying
hope that you're not
history.
speaking for, quote, Cuban Americans, but for all Americans, because it's not a racial question. It's a question of
I'm talking about
national interest.
I'm representing District Number 27.
I understand. But I'm just saying. I got it. And I'm as against communism, I think, as anybody. But my question is.
Okay, so Cuban Americans who justifiably have issues with communism may, because I don't have enough information, this woman is saying that she's representing them. I am not. I think if you asked a Cuban American, do you want to punish communists all over the world, they probably say absolutely. But if you were to say, would you like your son to go over to Eastern Europe and fight jihad against the Russian military, they'd probably say no. They'd probably say, whoa, andale. Too far. And you can't, don't be angry at me. My kids are half Spanish, so I get a pass. I can do that. We continue.
If we are providing weapons to one side in a war, I think it's fair to ask, maybe the other side would say that's an act of war against us.
Correct. That would be an act. This is what's killing me. I just read off all those weapons and munitions. 30 countries, that's NATO, have been giving these people since before the Biden administration and since before the Trump administration. At the border of Russia. And all these people have been constantly telling, oh, we did this guy Putin, he went in unprovoked. Our actions and NATO's actions are not the actions of a group of people who believe that this guy Putin was some crazy, unhinged, unstable madman. I've been around crazy, unhinged, unstable people that other people thought could go off at any moment. You know what you do with people like that? You reduce provocations and instigations as much as possible. You don't increase them. It's almost like, we continue.
And if that happens, then what next? And to not think about that seems negligent, but since you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I know that you have thought it through. So tell me your views on what would happen next.
Tucker, we have been providing javelins and stingers and ammunition, and we're providing a lot of military armament. So what is the difference between that and the MiGs and the S-300s? What's the difference? I mean, Putin, you have to understand that we are, unfortunately, the United States has fallen into the Vladimir Putin's trap. He is the one dictating what we're going to do, what we're...
No, I think he's fallen into ours, man. I think he's fallen into ours. I think this invasion was a mistake on his part, both morally and strategically. I think he's fallen into our trap, to be honest with you. But let's see what she's saying.
Not going to do. He said, we do not want, we are imposing a no-fly zone over Ukraine, and we are
so we're letting Putin
it.
control our behavior. Okay, so that seems like a loss right there. Right. Okay, but let me just ask you, because we believe we don't need more evidence that Putin has bad intent, that he's evil. A lot of people believe he's crazy, including some informed people, including many Russians. So we know he's volatile, and we know that he's heavily... How many nuclear weapons, by the way, does Russia have? Do you know?
Many.
About 6,000 is the guess. One is enough, and that's a fair answer.
One is enough.
So are we concerned at all that he might use a nuclear weapon against the United States? Is that a concern? Is that something that you consider as you recommend these policies?
Of course that we're very concerned, and we're also concerned that...
But we're not going to take a no-fly zone, which would almost guarantee an instigation of a war. And I don't know if you guys saw this. I haven't played this yet. But one of the last times Putin spoke, he said, look, we know that we can't take you guys on. He's talking to NATO. He said, we know we can't fuck with NATO militarily. And then he goes, but we got stuff, right? And everybody knows what he was talking about. So again, these people are absolutely insane. She's saying it's not off the table. Even Jen Psaki, in all her glory, told those TikTokers, hell no, we can't do a no-fly zone. Jen Psaki said that a no-fly zone would be bad for humanity. I swear to God, that's what Jen Psaki said. But here's this woman talking about it shouldn't be off the table. People are weird, bro. These are strange people. They're very strange people. We continue. Unbelievable.
He may be throwing a biological weapon against the Ukrainians within the next few hours because he cannot take Kiev as he thought he was going.
Oh, see how she made a mistake. She pronounced it Kiev, but Kiev is the Russian pronunciation, and we've got to participate with the Nazis and completely erase the millions of Ukrainian-born folks over there in the Donbass region who identify with Russia. So we've got to say Kiev now, which is the Ukrainian way of pronouncing it, instead of Kiev, because we need to subliminally participate in Russian erasure. Because these Russians are all NPCs. They're non-player characters. They've got no soul. They're just made to be caught and destroyed. We continue.
to. So of course that we are in confronting a dictator. But I think that we should put this into context, and I thank you very much that you're giving me the opportunity.
Of course.
If we believe in the free world, that this is just going to be the first or the last confrontation with a bad actor, we're in for a very big surprise. Because if we do not confront bad actors with strength, then we're going to have China and Russia and Iran and Fidel and you and Venezuela
Fidel.
and Nicaragua. They're watching what we're doing.
But if, and needless to say, I've made that
Fidel is going to come back. Or his son. Maybe she's talking about Fidel Jr. What? What the hell is, here's my baby. How you doing, baby? We're just talking about World War III. Don't worry. I'll be with you soon.
argument, for 30 years on television. The question is, are we doing it with all available risks known to the population in whose name we're doing it? So I'm asking you, what do you think the chances are? And I'm sure you've gained this.
You know what I'm going to do? You know what I'm going to do, dear listener? Let's do a multiple choice question. We're going to do a multiple choice question because I want her to list off all those nations and world leaders again. And I'm going to ask you guys a multiple choice question. I've been consistently asking this all over the place.
Bad actor, we're in for a very big surprise. Because if we do not confront bad actors with strength, then we're going to have China and Russia and Iran and Fidel and you and Venezuela and Nicaragua. They're watching what we're doing.
But if
Okay, China, Fidel, Iran, Venezuela, Nicaragua, 6 nations. Those are 6 nations. Now I'm going to ask you a question, dear listener, because we're talking about bad actors on the global stage. Here's a multiple choice question. Who has dropped more bodies in the last 20 years? Those 6 actors combined or the United States of America? Who's dropped more bodies on the planet Earth? Because we're talking about bad actors on the global stage, dear listener. Who has killed more human beings in the image and likeness of God? Those 6 nations combined or the United States of America in the last 20 years? Let me guess. Who wants to answer that question? I'll let somebody answer that question. A, is all those 6 nations combined in the ghost of Fidel Castro? Okay. Or B, do you not? Sorry, Dawn Fraulein, Miss Dawn Fraulein has answered the question accurately. Holy smoke. The hypocrisy of our country is mind-bending. Rich said the Clintons. Now here's Adam Keene. Yo, Vin, take a break, man. You're way too worked up on this Ukraine shit. My brother. The gas prices are not really affecting me. I work from home. My kids are homeschooled. The gym that I go to is literally, like a 14-second drive there. My family's in good shape. Nobody in my family is in anywhere even near close to any threat of any bombing or anything like that. My life is, I get up when I want. I work when I want. I do what I want when I want how to do it. I've got accesses and privileges that even regular Americans don't have. In a couple days, I'm going to go to a show with a pretty big name band, and I've got all these passes because I've got accesses. I've got a pretty good life. The problem is that across the world, in Russia, that's them, and Ukraine, that's them, you got innocent civilians who are paying the price for the bullshit actions of people that we elected. And so I'm a Christian. I believe that God's given me a little soapbox and a little community of people who have been able to help me think through these issues in a cogent, nuanced manner. Now, I belong to a country that I love very dearly, who has spilled much blood all over the fucking planet. So, I'm not one of these people that believes that emotion is bad. I'm not one of these people that even believes expression of negative emotion is bad. It's part of the human experience. What I do believe, though, about, quote, negative emotions is that it is a crime to waste negative emotions on trivialities or exclusively on yourself and your little circle. You don't live in a country that's bordered by a country that's hostile to you, that's got $2 billion worth of weaponry in it. So I can understand how you could sit there at the comfort of your home and just chill out and say, chill out, bro. The other thing is that I have children and I want a better America for them, because the more and more we do this, the less and less secure everybody will be. So that's why I have no problem with, quote, getting worked up in this, and I'm not going to take a break on it. That's why. We continue.
Needless to say, I've made that argument, for 30 years on television. The question is, are we doing it with all available risks known to the population in whose name we're doing it? So I'm asking you, what do you think the chances are, and I'm sure you've gamed this out as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, that Putin uses a nuclear weapon against the United States in response to this? What would you calculate the chances
He can... Sure that we are taking that into consideration. And
but what do you think the likely? I mean,
obvious.
Our viewers are, I'm sure, supporting you. I think most conservatives are on your side. But
say what you want about Tucker Carlson, but he's willing to go up against the zeitgeist of his little toxic subculture. He may not be my favorite person in the world, but trust me, you got to have a certain kind of personality type to go against the zeitgeist of your little subculture. Trust me.
I just think they should know what the informed view of the likelihood of a retaliatory nuclear strike from Vladimir Putin is. What would you assess it as being?
And I repeat, that's a hypothetical question, and I
It's hardly a
believe
hypothetical.
that he will.
How could it be a hypothetical question when you guys keep telling us that this dude is a madman and that he's crazy and that he's so volatile that one little spark is gonna send him over the edge because he's got these crazy Dr. Evil plans for taking over the world? How could that be speculative? We're gonna shoot down his jets in real life, not in a video game like the Ukrainian propaganda machine wanted us to believe. We're gonna shoot down. America is gonna shoot down their jets. And he's not going to respond?
He will not take that step if, starting today, the Biden administration will send the message that we are in charge, that NATO is ready to confront him, and so are we. And that is the problem that I believe, I'm not sure if you...
I agree. NATO is the problem. NATO is the problem. I agree.
Share in my view that you obtain peace, you obtain this, you can take all the power away from Putin if you show strength. To put it in
so
more
do you believe
layman
that?
terms.
You take all you take all the power away from Putin if you show more strength? I thought he was a madman. That's rationality. What you're saying is we're coming at him with overwhelming firepower that the U.S. military has, because we've got the most devastating military ever in the history of human beings, more devastating than all previous other militaries combined times 10. That's a fact. So we're going to show up with this devastating armament, and he's going to rationally say, damn, I need to bend the knee to America. I need to blink. That is a rational form of reasoning. But you guys keep telling me that Putin is crazy. So which is it? Is he a madman? In which case you cannot rely on rationality. But if he is rational, then that opens up another set of questions. If Mr. Putin is rational, then have we done everything rationally possible to avoid this eventuality? I think that's a fair question, don't you, dear listener? Was it irrational for Mr. Putin? Chris Sims, I'm speaking specifically to you. to constantly go to the UN and say, stop expanding eastward, stop packing my border with all of these superior weapons to a country that's hostile to Russian people, stop arming Nazis who hate my people. I don't think Mr. Putin has any moral predilection against Nazism, because if he did, then he would have had a serious problem with us when we invaded Iraq. He doesn't have any moral issues with Nazism, but there is a historical issue between Russia and Ukrainian Nazis. Now, was it rational for him to say, I don't want that shit at my border? Or was he being crazy for saying, I don't want that shit at my border? Was he rational for saying, I don't want NATO to continually expand into Eastern Europe, going all over the place where we are, encircling us? Or was that irrational for him to say that? And if it was rational for him to say that, why didn't we respond rationally? Chris, we continue.
I believe that's true. So President Zelensky said yesterday that he is considering declaring that Ukraine would not join.
There you go. There you go. I don't care what Putin says or wants. There you go. But Putin and Chris, thank you for your honesty. I appreciate you. And if you're in the comment section, we're not going to collapse on Chris. We're never going to penalize anybody in the comment section for being honest. But Chris, thank you. Thank you. You don't care what he has to say. Thank you. Because, Chris, that is the posture of America. That's how we are. We don't care, man. I don't care what you have to say. I don't care. I don't care what you have to say, Mr. Putin. You're Putin. You're a Russian, for God's sake. I don't care what you have to say. There it is. There it is, guys. And I would simply say to you, Chris, it is that American arrogance that leads us into constant states of conflict and warfare with people all across the globe. That's what I'd say to you. Please think about it.
NATO in exchange for having Russian troops withdraw from his country. Would you describe, this is President Zelensky speaking, would you describe that
Zelensky can... Who am I to say what's correct and what's incorrect?
Would you accept? Would you? Well, I don't know. You okay? But no, wait a minute. Hold on. Please don't dodge the question. Would that be an answer you'd be satisfied with if Zelensky made good on what he just suggested, that we'll agree to neutrality, we'll relinquish claims to Crimea, and the Russians leave? Would that be okay with you? Would you consider that an honorable exit, or would you consider it a display of weakness?
If Zelensky comes to the United States Congress and he says that this is the best path forward, we are no one to say something to the contrary. But I don't think he's going to say that. So we're creating scenarios here that are hypothetical.
No, we're not. He himself, you may not be following this closely, but he has said that multiple times. So, of course, that outcome would spare the deaths of...
He has said it multiple times. Why is our media... and why is our government not pushing for this? Why isn't Biden on TV every single day saying, give up Crimea, stop your offensive tactics against the Russians, recognize Donbass, and draft a constitutional amendment that completely neutralizes your relationship with NATO, and we will draft a UN amendment that completely disqualifies you from NATO? Why not do that? Considering that's been the man's beef. The speech that he gave when Mr. Putin, when he launched a special operation, i.e. fucking invasion, that is guaranteed to kill civilians, Mr. Putin mentioned NATO 40 times. As DJ has mentioned, as Doug has mentioned, we're talking about hypersonic weapons that can hit Moscow in less than 5 minutes. I have been babbling at the mouth for 44 minutes. That means 8 times these things can hit Moscow by the time I've been speaking.
Okay, but that would spare the deaths, and since I know you have great concern for the civilian population of Ukraine, that would spare the deaths.
We all do.
of untold thousands and preserve the capital city from being destroyed. So would that be better than increasing the level of armed conflict
Ridiculous
in Ukraine?
question.
Which would be a better outcome?
That's for the Ukrainians.
What do you
to
mean?
decide.
You're an American policymaker who's imposing.
He didn't say what the decision should be, ma'am. He said, would it be better? Guys, are you hearing this? This is not a game. We're talking about the difference between continuing a war that's harming civies. Mr. Zelensky is completely fine. He's continually giving these speeches in fatigues as if he's going to jihad. He's asking, would negotiations for peace that could actually function for peace in the real world for Ukraine and Russia both, would that be better? He didn't say you command them from where you're sitting. He's saying, would it be better? Let me rewind it so you can see again. Soraya, why are you trying to prove yourself to that dude? That guy. All right, watch this, guys. Watch this.
But he has said that multiple times. So of course that outcome would spare the deaths
up to him.
Okay, but that would spare the deaths, and since I know you have great concern for the civilian population of Ukraine, that would spare the deaths.
We all do.
Of untold thousands. And
she blinked. I'm a body language guy. I'm sorry, guys. I don't think that this young lady gives a fuck about Russian civilians or Ukrainian civilians at all.
Preserve the capital city from being destroyed. So would that be better than increasing the level of armed conflict in Ukraine? Which would be a better outcome?
Which would be a better outcome? That's all he said. That's for them to decide. That's a non-answer. And it pushes me. I think Christine, some of you guys, I don't recognize your names. And if you're new to Middle America, thank you. Christine says, Congress always wants war, unfortunately. Sounds like they don't want the war to end. Putin's demands aren't even that unreasonable, really, in my opinion, anyway. Be careful, Christine. The only thing that can get so-called progressives, apparently, and neocons together is protracted war. I do not understand this.
Ukrainians.
What do you mean? You're an American policymaker who's imposing your views on Ukraine, and I'm asking you simply, would that be why not push? Well, of course you are. You're saying we need to send materiel, billions of dollars, arm the military, and I'm not criticizing your position. I'm just asking.
I'm criticizing that position. I would like the $2 billion here. I had two people on my broadcast earlier today. One himself is dealing with chemotherapy. The other, his dad, is dealing with chemotherapy stage 4, which is going to financially desecrate both of those people. So I want the money going to them. So I disagree.
Has it occurred that many lives might be saved if we were to encourage the peaceful solution that's already on the table? Are you doing anything in that direction?
If the Ukrainians want to go that route, they have the right to, and we're no one to say anything about it because they are the ones dying on the streets, and they're the ones under
and they certainly are. They certainly are dying. That's right. I don't notice any members of Congress or David Frum laying down their lives. It's the Ukrainians. But have you suggested that?
Tucker, I think that we have talked about this point enough. I also wanted you to.
Whoa! Have you suggested that? Have you suggested a peaceful solution and a bloodless or a less bloody resolution to this conflict? No, it's not my place to say. Now, earlier she was saying that we needed to punish Mr. Putin. That was her place to say. But now she can't even get it out of her mouth. The things that make for peace. Are you watching? This is why I'm saying a lot of this shit is on us. We elected this woman. We elected Joe Biden. We elected Donald Trump. We did this whole two-party bullshit where you guys really think there's two parties now? Or there's actually two parties? This is insanity. Wow. She won't answer the question. I mean, I'm against U.S. funding more war in general. This may be a case of the government trying to play all the angles, both arming the Ukrainians and hoping Ukraine can manage to force a peace. Doubt it. I think, River, my brother, that you are just too optimistic about the intentions of our government. That's what I think.
Give me the opportunity to explain to you about open borders because you said that I was in favor of open borders and I wanted to talk to your production.
Well, you just called last month for the amnesty for tens of millions of people who came into this country illegally.
What does the border have to do with Okay, I see what this is. Somebody was in her earpiece that was saying, listen, this is Fox News, okay? And Tucker, you're looking horrible right now because Tucker's audience, who normally goes along with all of our talking points, are going to start saying, well, wait a second, this woman really looks like she's trying to avoid the question about peace. So let's bring up the border. Bring up the border because that'll get them all emotional, riled up, and then they'll forget about what they just saw in the last 2 minutes. Bring up the border. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, lady. Tucker, why are you falling? Tucker's falling for it, y'all. He's falling for it. He fell for it hook, line, and sinker. Holy shit.
She did, because I read the legislation today.
No, I did not.
Actually, about 20 minutes ago I read it.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad you did. And
yes, I did.
And I will invite you to read it again because just give me 30 seconds and I promise I'll give it to you in sound bites. The Dignity Act, which I presented last month.
I don't care about the border right now.
They can start paying, and they can.
But now we're getting pretty deep into the talking points here. What you're doing is people who came here, people who came over our border,
and who are contributing to our.
I don't care.
Well, look, I think you've said it yourself that people who came here illegally, tens of millions,
the border, because you know what?
My
community, the one that I represent. Let me finish.
Let me finish.
America, the one that I represent.
Okay.
Listen. Let me finish. Give me 15 seconds.
I shall.
Thank you. I have created a series of measures so we can secure the border. Because we, the Browns, the Hispanics, the Latinos in this country are not in favor of open borders. The problem is that no one asks us.
I am. I'm a Brown. I'm in favor of open borders. We continue.
We want to live in the promised land and we want to contribute because
America's not the promised land. Canaan is. We continue.
Very well that if we deport those 11 or 13 million, we may not have food by Friday.
Okay.
Why? Because the food supply chain.
Please, and I'm sorry, I think everyone understands this, that we have other supply chain issues. And by the way, I'm not attacking anybody living in this country legally or illegally. I'm asking a question about borders. All of us are appalled by the violation of Ukraine's borders. You don't seem as appalled by the violation of our borders by tens of millions of people. So let me ask you for the third time. I don't want to misrepresent
I am
you.
correct.
I'm asking you, you don't support sending the U.S. military to the border. You don't. I just want our viewers to understand that you're for defending a foreign country but not our own. And I think it's pretty clear.
I am
Please correct me if I'm wrong.
All the technology we could find so we can secure the border. We're all the military, the veterans, the police.
By Americans who support the Ukrainians' right to secure their own borders. I mean, I certainly do. Most people do. All Americans do. Can you see the frustration that they might feel listening to you, a lawmaker, say, yeah, there's a process, but when it happens in a foreign country, we have to send billions of the U.S. military, your sons, but we can't kind of do that here because why? I mean, can you sort of understand the frustration? A little bit?
But I have never said that I
ridiculous.
want to send
This woman has
troops,
successfully-
our boys, to
she's
fight in
successfully
Ukraine. Because
diverted-
everything that
Fighter planes.
Zelensky is asked, and we're sending at the same time stingers and javelins and ammunitions, and we're sending a lot
Why
of
not
things
treat
that
our
are
own border
related
with
to
the
the
same
military.
seriousness? That's it. That's it. But you're not. You're not treating our border crisis with any level of the same seriousness
And you see, you're
treating Ukraine.
misrepresenting.
Okay,
No,
people can
it's not
judge.
true. You're misrepresenting this bill that is probably one of the best bills that has been presented when it talks about immigration reform law. I invite you to read it and invite me back so we can discuss it.
All right. Congresswoman, I don't agree with you, but I certainly appreciate your coming
Unbelievable.
on.
He
It's
fell
hard to
for
get
it.
people to do that, and
Unbelievable.
and I appreciate that you did.
He
Thanks.
fell for it.
Of course, invite me again so we can continue talking about immigration, which is one of the biggest problems we have. And if the GOP doesn't realize it,
Shut up. Okay. So, open. So, Tucker completely fell for her now I see how she got elected. Whoever spoke in her little earpiece and said, change the subject. We can't have it all, mashallah, tabaraka, jazakallahu khairan. I appreciate you. My daughter makes the best cookies, y'all, I'm telling you. She's the best. Okay. Huh? Good day. Inshallah. I won't. See, my kid's taking care of me. Go to sleep, Dad. Don't spend too much time on the stream. And now you're taking the charger. All right, get out of here. You're the worst. Did you see that? Hey, she is not a bad politician. She's a bad politician in the moral sense, but she's a brilliant politician because she refused to even endorse a hypothetical world in which peace could be possible. This woman, she changed the subject. She said, man, we're talking too much about this Ukraine. That's the only thing anybody's talking about. You're talking about sending MiGs and shooting down Russian jets, lady. You're talking about our jacked up economy and co-signing billions and billions and billions of dollars being sent to a nation outside of America, which benefits us zero. What are you talking about? And Tucker, how could you fall for this nonsense, my man? How in the world? Yeah, see, right there. He got triggered. The Browns. She made sure to put the Browns in there. She made sure to put race in there, and she knows exactly how to. She got him. She beat him. I give the round. I give the round to Tucker, to this lady, because he fell for it. See, now this is what happens. I have discussions with people. They're like, when you debate, you force people to answer questions. Yes, I do. And this is why. I force the issue. And if you think that that's, quote, bullying, then I'm not even mad at you. But I refuse to allow people to change the subject. Answer the question. Do you want peace in Ukraine and Russia, yes or no? I'm not going to give you an option to say it's hypothetical. I'm not going to give you an option to say, no. If Zelensky concedes Crimea, drafts a constitutional amendment to reverse February 7, 2019, and neutralizes NATO, would that be good? He didn't even say, would you recommend that? He said, would that be good? She would not even answer that directly, y'all. Then she said, we're talking about this too much. You know what I'd have said? I'd have said, nah, lady. Answer that question, yes or no, directly, or the interview is over. I'm not going to talk about all this other nonsense. What we're talking about right now is ensuring that World War III doesn't come upon us. And you went out and said you would be good with no-fly zones and that no-fly zones would be on the table, and you didn't care what the ramifications of the no-fly zone were. And unless you're going to walk that back, you're going to have to defend that. We're not talking about anything else. That's what I would have said. That's what I would have said. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. How many people who want war with Russia actually traveled outside the USA? How many people who want war with Russia actually traveled outside the United States? That's a good question. And how many people have seen war? And how many people have seen the ramifications of what a drone does to a human body? How many people? I keep mentioning this French journalist who implanted in the Donbass region. And she is the difference. She got there in 2016. And the difference between, I just saw an interview with her about 10 days ago. And she's a completely different person. I think all rank and file politicians on both sides want a resolution to what is happening in Ukraine. I think that that is a very rational perspective to possess, but I do not think that that is true. I don't. And you yourself said that he's willing to discuss neutrality. Why did it take all of these dead bodies for Mr. Zelensky to do the rational thing? And when is he and NATO and our country ever going to be held accountable in the midst of this nonsense? Now listen, what I always say is that if you believe that what this woman says is rational, if you believe that what we just saw is rational from this woman, where she would not even say, yeah, that would be good if they pursued a less bloody resolution to this conflict. Go ahead and click on that button right there. You will definitely have time to talk. You'll have time to speak. You'll have time to make your case, because I have no idea how any of us couldn't be massively concerned with this. And the fact, I don't hang around with a lot of Tucker Carlson viewers anymore. But he said that most right-wingers are on her side. I find that very hard to believe. I've got a friend who's a pretty far-right guy. We argue all the time. Right now, he's arguing with me that Tucker won when he clearly lost. And he's been terrified about war with Russia. Does anybody know anybody on the right or the left that's like, yeah, let's initiate these no-flies? Who knows what they're talking about? I don't think Tucker's right on that one. Yeah, Tucker's not on our side. I think he really thought NATO would offer protection against Russia. I think he sees them as being passive and has newfound faith in the people of his country fighting against invasion. Okay. Hello, John Doe. Talk to me, my brother. Can you hear me?
Hello? Oh, I didn't know if I was live or what. I didn't know what this was.
You are
I was
live.
just trying to.
You are
Oh,
live,
damn.
my brother, on Middle America. Yes, sir. Talk to me.
I didn't mean to do that.
Oh, you didn't mean to call in?
Yeah, I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh, okay. Well, give us your thoughts before I kick you off.
I don't think you want to know my thoughts.
All right. Fair enough. Well, thank you for calling in anyway, man.
Thanks.
All right, so there you go. See, it's that simple. I don't bite. If you believe what? Hannity? No. Hannity wants a no-fly zone? What do I think of Biden's pledge to Ukraine? What, the $800 million in arms? Yeah, we went over it because the United States government was bragging about how many more weapons we're sending over there to the border of Russia, which began this conflict in the first fucking place. Okay. All right. Okay. I stand corrected. I stand corrected. So Tucker's standing up against Hannity as well. Dear listener, a no-fly zone would almost guarantee some sort of war with Russia. Would that necessarily get nuclear? In my opinion, I don't necessarily think so. Why? I don't believe that Vladimir Putin's a madman. Sorry. I don't believe he is. If you think he's a madman, call me up and explain to me why it would be irrational for anybody to be concerned about the expansion of NATO all around Russian borders from hostile actors who hate Russian people, particularly geographical Nazis like what we've seen in the Ukraine. Call me up and tell me it's irrational for Mr. Putin to be concerned about that. So I don't believe this caricature of Mr. Putin, that he's a stark raving crazy person. He could have turned Ukraine into a parking lot by now if he wanted to. He hasn't. If he was really crazy, he would. If I say, well, he's showing some restraint as far as the damage he's done versus the military capability he has, and you say, well, that's just because whatever you say there is going to betray a certain amount of rational thought on Putin's part, in which case you can't say he's a madman just doing crazy shit. That means that he's thinking rationally. So I don't believe that it would metastasize into a nuclear war, but I don't want United States soldiers fighting Russian soldiers. I don't want that to happen. What I want is peace. That's what I want. He left the power, water, and internet on. See Iraq. See, the problem that I have with a lot of my friends. Yeah, sure, Riv, come on. The problem that I have with a lot of my friends in this situation is the short memory. Do you not remember the shock and awe campaign? Do you honestly think that this invasion of Ukraine is anything even relatively close to what we did to Iraq? That's whataboutism, then. Nope. That's learning from history, comparing and contrasting so as to ascertain the goals, aspirations, and motives of this aggressor. That's what that's called. The people in the media want us to suspend our memory and forget about the things that we have seen. And they want us to believe the most recent terror update. So before, you were supposed to be terrified of Muslims. So a good 15 years, we're all terrified of Muslims. And then in came the Russophobia in 2016. So now all of you are now sufficiently so Russophobic that people on Pop TV can start calling for the reinstitution of McCarthyism at the DOJ. I have no issue with you jumping on. Jump on. I don't have a problem with you jumping on at all, Sadie. I don't have a problem with anybody jumping on. Because as I said, I don't understand the reasoning of some people. And you're absolutely one of them. Now, me saying I don't understand a person's reasoning is not an insult to their intelligence. It just means I don't understand this reasoning. Steve Schaus says, I got news for you, Middle America. There's been Russophobia. Yes, there has been Russophobia, but what I'm talking about is the persistent and purposeful promotion of Russophobia and McCarthyism. That is new. That is new. Don't forget the anthrax dude was suicided before he could stand trial, and they proclaimed his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. Correct. Just like when Vicki Newland was on there, and she said, "We're concerned not the chemical facility, not the weapons labs, no, bio research facilities. We're concerned that the Russians might stumble upon materials. We're concerned about it." Because she's a Russian propagandist. And then Mr. Rubio followed up with saying, "Aren't you 100% sure that if there was a chemical attack in Ukraine, it would have been done by the Russians?" And she said, yes. So even before the, quote, chemical attack happened, she was 100% sure that it would be the Russians. Because the Ukrainians would never do such a thing. Unbelievable. This is the great River Roth. River Roth, ladies and gents.
Hello.
Talk to me, Riv.
Okay, so there's one thing I do want to note. I apologize. I am a little bit. I'm a little bit tired this evening, so I did want to comment on one thing you mentioned earlier.
Okay, go for it.
You mentioned Putin being able to more than likely just flatten Ukraine if he wanted to with his military. I should note, based on a lot of the research I've been doing, and I've been reading a lot on Russian military tactics and equipment for the last, obviously, month and a half or so since this whole thing really started kicking off. And I got to tell you, that doesn't seem to be accurate based on solely, some of the news articles I've been pulling up from the past. Stuff about their Air Force, their pilots specifically having issues getting the 40 hours a month flight time they need to remain active members of, their fighter pilot corps. Stuff like images of destroyed Russian tanks during this conflict having essentially the reactive armor plating opened up and chunks of cardboard being like
cardboard.
Yes, seriously. I can send you a video.
Okay,
Hand to God.
Okay. So let me get this straight. Let me figure this out. The Russian military has a convoy of tanks that are really insulated with cardboard.
No, not insulated with cardboard. I should specify. Specifically pieces of their reactive armor.
Oh,
now, reactive armor is a piece of the armor. It's likely due to some issues of corruption within their military. This is something that's been known for years.
Right. Okay. So and their pilots haven't even been able to get their 40 hours. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay,
this has been an issue that's been reported on for years.
So why are we sending them $2 billion in aid with these hypersonic capabilities and things of that nature if they're just fighting a paper tiger?
Again, this is more than likely because the United States wants to make sure that this becomes essentially Russia's second Afghanistan. They fought Afghanistan once in the 90s, and we know how that went, or the 80s, I should say. I'm sorry.
Well, that's
that destroyed them.
Yeah, but that's completely different, right? You got to deal with the terrain. The terrain is your number one enemy in Afghanistan.
The terrain is a big part of it, and if you'll, the terrain is a big part of it.
I'm very familiar with the Afghanistan situation. This situation, I'm not, but I'm very, very familiar with that. That's the first thing they tell you is that the terrain is the greatest enemy. So let me just figure this out. You're saying we're sending billions and billions and billions of dollars to help the Ukrainians, and Zelensky is begging us for more billions of dollars to fight a Russian military that's got cardboard in their tanks and pilots that can't fly. Is that the argument?
Now, that's not quite the entire argument, no. The point I'm trying to make is that what we've seen specifically with what's going on in Ukraine has shown that there is a major issue in Russia's military. One that probably wasn't entirely, that we weren't entirely aware of until, within the last few weeks.
And you believe this?
Again, this is based on what I've been seeing, based on what I've been reading about the Russian military, and on top of that, based on video we've seen of what's going on. You've seen the videos of Russian tanks getting stuck in the mud, right? Like huge sections of their convoys, and just, Ukrainian soldiers towing these things out.
River, no disrespect to you, River, but have you how much warfare have you studied war? Like,
yes, this topic I've actually done a lot of research on, yes.
No, I'm not talking about this. I'm just talking about war in general.
In general, yes.
Okay.
I don't want to call myself a history buff. I don't find that term to be at all accurate, but it's something that I do find to be incredibly interesting, and I've done a lot of research over quite a few years now.
Okay. So are you saying, I just want it for the record, are you saying that the Russians are trying the hardest that they can against the Ukrainians, but they've got cardboard in their tanks?
Not quite what I'm saying. No.
Like, give me the percentage of how much you think the Russians are fighting the Ukrainians.
Like I couldn't even begin to guess a percentage, boss. What I'm trying to get at is there's a number of issues that we've seen, especially around their trucks. The big thing that Russia's equipment is where our issue is.
Get me the sources. Get me these sources.
I will compile some links for you, boss. I don't have them on my computer, and I'm on my phone if you can't tell.
That's fair. Hey, listen, stay with me for a second. DJ, do you want to jump on, because we can have multiple heads on, DJ. So look, DJ, I'm going to give you the link, and and you can jump on. Are you familiar with McGregor? He's a military guy, comments on Fox News.
McGregor?
You know I'm referring to?
I know the name. I do not know any of his commentary on Fox News. Okay. Admittedly, I don't really pay a lot of attention to that network as much as I'd like to. Work has been a bit difficult, especially when trying to keep up with this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question I have is, do you believe that that the Russians are struggling, or do you believe that they are exercising restraint?
I believe that they are legitimately having issues.
Okay.
When you're having the kind of issues that I'm seeing, specifically with fuel resources seemingly having issues getting them.
Okay.
With convoys getting stuck on the roads. This is something that you would not normally see, especially...
Convoys getting stuck on the road is not something you'd normally see?
Again, let me finish my point.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You would not normally see specifically the kind of issues they're hitting with fuel if they have their logistics on point. In war, logistics is very important. Making sure that fuel arrives to depots on time. Reports of, them running out of fuel well before the point when more fuel is arriving. That's not extremely common.
Okay. And we
in a well-oiled machine, I should say.
That's not common.
In a well-oiled war machine, no.
You don't think that's Okay. Can I ask you a couple more questions?
Go ahead.
So then you would agree with me then, if that's the case, then we don't need to send the Ukrainians a single penny of military aid then.
Well, I've been in agreement as far as we shouldn't be sending military aid.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. That's fair. So let me ask you, let me push you even further then. If what you're saying is true, and I got to tell you, I don't believe that it's true, but as I said, I'm biased, but I can be converted. But if what you're saying is true, then wouldn't it be logically coherent to ask for billions of dollars in military aid and say that the Russians are struggling mightily at the same time? Wouldn't that be irrational?
Has that not been their position? They've been the Ukrainians have been pushing a pretty hard propaganda war that they're kicking the Russians' ass, and based solely based solely. I mean, am I wrong? Are they not pushing their propaganda war hard?
No, I'm just, aside from me, you're the first person on Middle America that has dared to. You watch the comment section now. They're going to call you a Putin puppet. Watch.
Oh, I'm sure, but believe me, I've been on the side of the Ukrainians this whole time. I don't want a war, and I think that Putin is well beyond overstepped his bounds.
Let me just stop you and defend you, because they're gonna put you on a cross, buddy. Just give me. There's a nice spot next to me, inshallah. Me, you, Odin, will be okay. But this guy has been, in my view, completely biased to Ukraine. Putin's a monster, that type of guy. In my view, I'm not saying that that's how they are. I'm just saying that's been my view of River. So for River to say this is a pretty sophisticated propaganda war by the Ukrainians means that they're
I'm not calling sophisticated, I should say. Okay, the War Thunder footage was kind of funny.
Purposeful propaganda. Purposeful propaganda. Yeah. So then if they're doing this kind of clunky, clumsy, we're gonna do Call of Duty and then call it real life. How can you be certain that what you're hearing or seeing about the supposed dereliction of the Russian military, how can you be sure that that's true?
Well, again, and this is my point, there's a lot of issues with trying to confirm anything for sure. But when you see something that's been photographed and you can confirm based on other photographs of the same kind of equipment, yeah, that's exactly what they say it is. So either they're staging this photograph after having destroyed the equipment to make it look shoddy and to make it look worse than it should be. That doesn't make much sense, because
staging captured and destroyed equipment doesn't make sense.
No. Specifically staging it to make it look like it's shoddily built. If you capture something in a war after you have it destroyed, you're going to not try to make it look like, well, obviously our enemies don't know how to build these things. You'd probably want to make it like the equipment we have is able to destroy these massive, dangerous weapons of war from our enemies.
Not if you want to encourage foreign fighters to leave their nation to come fight an incompetent bad guy.
Again, perhaps that might be the case. However,
I mean, I'm working on something right now with these, God bless them, these foreign fighters who are going over there. And I'm working on validating a couple of these people's experiences, because the shit is mind blowing. But if you present the Russians as a there's a story. This is a confirmed story of the deadliest Canadian sniper. You heard about this guy?
Deadliest Canadian sniper.
Yeah. I'll show you.
I think I've heard this story, but I don't remember the details.
Yeah. So this guy. This guy is here you go, the world's deadliest sniper. He kills 40 people in a day. Meet the world's deadliest sniper who has joined the fight against Russia in Ukraine.
Oh, Lord.
Okay?
Already hearing the 40 people a day thing has me kind of chuckling.
His call sign is Wally. And yesterday, Spetsnaz took him out. He's dead. He was there for about 24 hours. The Western media did a giant propaganda push about him because he tooled up, he kitted out, and he went over there to Ukraine. And this guy is a trained warrior who's done a lot of damage in the world. and Spetsnaz took him out in 24 hours.
Yeah.
How come that's not all over that's not all over the place? Nobody knows about that. Because
Honestly,
that would portray the Russian military as a pretty elite fighting force, and then you would have a hard time convincing regular cosplay G.I. Joe down the street to kid up and do some war tourism if a guy like Wally can get taken out immediately, right?
For sure. That's certainly a possibility.
If you portray the Russians as these bungling idiots, then it works for recruiting. Isn't that true?
Yes. However, and again, this is kind of the thing that I'm more getting at. You'll notice that they more talk about people when we talk about war, but a big thing when it comes to war is the equipment you're dealing with. That's a big thing for when you're fighting a modern war. You want to know what kind of weapons is the enemy using? What is the layout of their equipment? And there's certain questions that might be raised, especially when Russia supposedly has stuff like the Su-57 that's supposed to be their answer to the F-22. And we haven't seen that as far as I'm aware.
Yeah,
we haven't seen one Su-57 or one Su-47 in the air.
Yeah, but
why not?
Well, I have a very rational answer for that. Doesn't that speak to Russia's underestimation of what the Ukrainians were going to do, considering their experience in Crimea and Georgia?
It's certainly a possibility, but by now you'd think that they'd have started moving that equipment. The other thing to note is especially the lack of of the trucks they've had. You've seen the video, right? Of these.
Are you saying they don't have any Su-57s?
Oh, no. I'm not saying they don't have them. They have them for sure. We have video of them in existence.
Okay.
What we don't have is footage of them in an active combat role, which doesn't make much sense if they're supposed to be their big dangerous weapon.
Well, that's why I'm saying, bro, like, tactically speaking, there's a very obvious tactical reason for why they would not do that. And that would be the Russians are not afraid of the Ukrainians per se. They're afraid of us. So they're not gonna put all their cards on the table for a conflict that they believe that they can win in 2 weeks to 2 months. That makes a lot of tactical. Absolutely. They're not going to put. They only have 12 of them that we know of. So why would they put those aircraft at risk when they have other lower grade aircraft and they obviously have air superiority? Are you denying that the
do they have air superiority by now? I mean,
are you denying the Russians have air superiority?
They seem to be having a lot of issues with aircraft getting struck down.
How they do? My brother. Then how comes all these cities keep getting bombed and destroyed all over the place if they don't have air superiority? Do you think the Russians can do that to us?
What I'm saying is complete air superiority.
What is
the fact that they're still losing? Okay, so when you look at what happened with Desert Storm, you know the basics of how Desert Storm went, right? Like the opening days of that campaign.
I'm very familiar with Desert Storm.
I would figure as much, but for those that might not be completely aware, the opening days of the air campaign were pretty much hit every radar installation, hit every anti-air installation that we could, and we used a lot of very sophisticated tactics to get those lit up in Iraq so that we could hit them very precisely and very accurately. We've seen, especially in the first few days of the invasion, and obviously this information is no longer accurate to the situation on the ground, of them seemingly hitting spots at random as far as trying to hit anti-air installations. Now, by now, a number of them are probably out of commission, captured, or destroyed. I'm not going to say that obviously the situation in Ukraine is rosy.
Wait. What's out of commission, captured, or destroyed?
Anti-air installations for Ukraine. Not all of them, mind you. Some of them most likely are. And I think that Russia likely believed that by the first day or so, they'd have complete air dominance. That is, no ability for Ukraine to launch any kind of aircraft into the air.
Tasco is asking you a question. Tasco has a question for you.
Okay, what's the question?
Ukraine is screaming at the top of their lungs to the West, close the sky, but Russia doesn't have air superiority?
Again, I'm not saying that at this point they don't have a decent chunk of the air completely under control. Okay. They have most of it.
You're saying they
some
don't
areas
have...
they're struggling with.
Can I say back to you what I'm hearing then?
Go ahead.
You're saying they don't have air superiority analogous to the way that the United States would?
Not completely, no. As far as...
And what I'm saying is there's no nation on the earth that would, my brother.
Mm-hmm.
There's no nation on the planet that would have air superiority equivalent to what we would have.
That's a fair point, and I'm not going to deny that.
Okay, so based on the fact that they're second tier in that regard, they do have air superiority relevant to their strength, though, right?
I suppose. However, again, my point is more that this has shown that there's especially considering the fact that you would think, based on the image that Russia projects itself as this massive, dangerous military that's on par, obviously not completely, but at least similar in par to our own military. That is obviously not the case, especially based on...
I completely disagree with you. They have nukes, right? They got about 6,400 nukes?
I'm talking in a conventional sense.
Yeah, but
nuclear warfare is something that is entirely different.
Why don't they just nuke them?
Likely because that would be viewed as provocation to NATO.
Isn't invading a sovereign nation viewed as a provocation to NATO?
Yes, but not to the degree of flattening Kyiv into the ground with a nuclear blast that would kill every, however, God knows how many civilians.
Yeah, DJ, we can hear you. Now, DJ, my brother, be respectful.
I will be.
But share your opinion. Okay, so I now am going to go into the background as a moderator. Sadie, can you hear us?
Oh, boy. Is this a debate? Did I just get myself into a debate?
You did. I'll take care of the situation. Don't worry. Okay, so DJ, go ahead. DJ has some questions.
Go ahead, DJ.
Okay, so do you not think that Russia completely controls the skies in Ukraine?
I think that, again, I should be very specific here.
Yes.
I don't have 100% up-to-date today information. I'm working on information from about 2 days ago, which was the last time I looked at the news, because honestly, the news has been depressing, to say the least.
Sure.
Well, I agree with you. I'm not going to attack you. I'm not going to jump on you and just jump down your throat. But I will say this. You're not going to get the truth from the news. As far as what's going on in the fog of war, current day, right now, you're not going to get that.
Oh, no.
If you listen to Western media, they will tell you that Ukraine is winning the war. It's insane to believe that. Okay?
I'm not calling this
getting a lot of feedback. Is there a reason for that, Vin?
I don't know why you're getting feedback. Riv's not getting feedback, neither am I. You're the problem, DJ.
I am the problem. That is true.
This is a world-famous DJ who called me while I was in the shower. So,
yeah,
we've turned a corner in our relationship. Okay, so wait. So, am I getting this right? Do you agree with that, Riv? That you generally don't trust what you see in the media?
Oh, absolutely not. I don't believe mainstream sources at all. What I am basing this on solely is information both from mainstream sources, firstly to see what the narrative is. That's my main reason for checking mainstream sources at all.
Sure.
To get reports of what may have happened, and then to confirm things with other sources, alternative media, etc., as well as checking reports from people on the ground. As much as Twitter is a dumpster fire of a website, it can be useful to a degree if you can find people that have accounts that existed well before any of these conflicts began
Right.
and have been talking about things well beforehand,
Sure.
and seem to be on the ground now.
Okay, now Sadie's in the house. Sadie, jump in here.
Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Hello, hello.
Okay. I have a question, just for point of reference, when you guys talk about mainstream media, and I think that Vin, I've actually talked to you about this. I'm not going to say that I don't ever read U.S. sources. I skim them, but I don't actually get my news from the U.S. sources because it's crap. I am a big reader of Al Jazeera and BBC News. I tend to avoid anything that has an overabundance of pundits and talking heads because people have a tendency of jumping on what analysts say or opinion pieces as news, and they're not news. They're analysis and opinions. That's not news. That's opinions. So I don't really pay attention to a lot of the U.S. news sources.
That's a good idea because it's very op-ed. It's very corporate in the United States. But you know what? Even if you listen to international news, it's actually the same today.
Yeah, I don't want to jump in here, but I'm going to jump in. The BBC is the British Broadcasting Corporation. Isn't that true?
It is, but it has the way that the British broadcast is set up is different. It's different the way that they present their news, and they're much more specific in regarding what's opinion as opposed to what's just like this is what happened without any form of analysis.
I would agree with you 10 years ago. That might have been the case. But now it's like they have a British accent, which gives them like plus 15 intellect. It sounds like it's smarter than it actually is.
Well, okay, wait a minute. It depends on which British accent you're talking about.
But aren't the UK part of NATO?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then how can we assume that we're going to get anything objective and unbiased when it comes to this discussion if they're owned by the country that's part of NATO, which is part and parcel to this conflict?
Oh, okay, but I didn't say specifically. I mean, obviously I look at BBC, but that is not the only news source I look at. Like I said, Al Jazeera is actually one of my favorite news sources. The Israeli Times.
Are you talking about Al Jazeera?
Yeah. And like the Israeli Times. There are other sources of news out there that you can find. You just have to actually look for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think all of us agree with that.
You know where I get the most accurate news? It's kind of weird because I've been doing this for a long time, but there's a lot of blogs out there that are a culmination of just people shit posting and actual news. And you sort through it long enough, you kind of can filter it. It's kind of hard to explain, but for me, like, it's been the best source of news that I found. I have a couple of different sources that I go to. It's a culmination of lots of shit posting and actual news, and you just get better at filtering through it the more you do it, if that makes sense.
This is absolutely a definite thing that I've done as well. Like I said, I do peruse mainstream sources just to get an idea of the narrative and then go to other sources. Alternative media, as well as blogs, as you said, are usually pretty good. One thing to comment about the BBC, honestly, they I have no respect for the BBC. Honestly, they
how come?
They're pretty bad.
What's so bad about the BBC?
Mind you, I have. No. Believe me, I'm not saying that they're as good as the Guardian. The Guardian's absolutely like trash. But okay. My big problem with the BBC is now admittedly, this is a bias that I have. I'm non-binary. I have a lot of trans friends. The BBC had a controversy recently.
Can I interject there? What does that have to do with anything?
I'm making my point. I'm pointing out. I'm pointing out a bias.
Okay.
I'm pointing out a bias that I have. That's why I'm bringing this up.
Okay.
The BBC had a recent pretty bad controversy about platforming TERFs, essentially, and a number of trans people that were also interviewed had their interviews excluded, and then they said they refused to speak to the BBC. So they outright lied. This essentially gave me an idea of exactly how, willing the BBC is to tell the truth in their reporting, especially when they've been called out on lies that they're spreading.
Okay.
Right. So you don't.
That
You
has
don't.
nothing to do with this. It's just an experience I've had with the BBC that makes me not trust them in general.
I don't
Okay,
think
that's-
anybody should trust any corporate news source in 2022. I mean,
Oh.
it's laughable to even assume that these corporations are giving you the straight news.
Well,
No, but
go ahead,
okay,
Sadie.
but hold on.
Go ahead, Sadie.
I'm just gonna say this. DJ was talking about like the shit posting, which actually I fully support, because if you start going onto blogs and you start, it's kind of one of those things where you have to take information from each side and you need to sort out and find where the commonalities lie. And you actually have, like, because the problem is that there is the bias that obviously we're talking about, but most of that bias still has kernels of the truth in it. So you have to be able to bounce back and forth and shift gears and say, okay, this is what's being said here, this is what's being said there, but this is a common denominator between the two. And so then you have to take that common denominator and you have to, actually search that more extensively. So you have to work for it, which I think kind of sucks. But what I was going to say about news organizations, that everybody is like, and I mean, I know, Vin, you're probably sick of this, especially in my comments. And River doesn't want to be like a history buff, but I'm a history nut and I'm perfectly capable of owning that. Yellow journalism has been like an issue for like, over what, 130 years? Like, I mean, yellow journalism was most prominent at the end of the 19th century,
Yeah,
but
that's
it
not
still
my
exists.
complaint. That's not my complaint, though.
Well, no, I'm just saying that when people are talking about it, it's a long-term issue. So kind of we as the consumers, if we're educated enough to understand that, have to like kind of sift through it or hold them accountable. I mean, they were held accountable back, when yellow journalism was so prevalent at the end of the 19th century. Eventually, they did have to be held accountable for the fact that they were just selling blatant sensationalism. So sooner or later,
yeah, go ahead.
So as consumers, at some point, as much as you want us to, rage against the government, and that's fine. So we have to kind of rage against the corporations, but it has to be done in such a way that, is going to have a long lasting effect, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, but I'm not advocating for raging against the government. What I'm advocating for is us being able to have these discussions without a select group of people curating to us what qualifies as an authoritative news source. That's my problem. So, for example, if the new policies that YouTube is enacting were around during the Iraq War, our chances of being able to mainstream a contrary narrative would have been cut off at the knees because of these policies.
But I'm going to go back because you keep bringing this up. And I guess I'm confused because, and I know, and I had said it earlier in the chat, because I didn't get to listen to the earlier. And I know, like, I only got to listen to like maybe the first 10 minutes. And you had mentioned something about Gen X and the propaganda war with Iraq. Now, number one, I don't know any Gen Xer that believed anything that the government was spewing. And also, we didn't have YouTube. We didn't have, Twitter, Facebook, all the rest of that bullshit. But there was a huge, huge anti-war movement. There was so much that was being put out at that time talking about the weapons of mass destruction and the fact that Saddam Hussein had already used them on his own people. I
I remember that
Well,
very clearly.
I didn't say that there wasn't an anti-war movement. What I was talking about are the main players in mainstream media. Let me read something to you about the Iraq War, about the BBC, from a study that was funded actually by the BBC. In the case of the Iraq War, the fact that the BBC was so ferociously attacked by the new Labour government should not obscure the fact that it was largely pro-war. A study by Cardiff University commissioned by the BBC found that the proportion of government sources used by the BBC was twice that of ITN and Channel 4 News, and that it was also less likely to use independent sources such as the Red Cross. This is not very surprising when we consider that the BBC leadership actively sought to amplify government propaganda and to marginalize dissent. So
I mean,
that
this
is
is not
that,
even
that is
shouldn't
my
be a surprise.
that what
This should
that
not be
was my
surprising.
problem. I'm not saying that there wasn't an anti-war movement. There was. What I'm talking
Well,
about
no,
is,
but what I'm,
just let me
but what
finish.
I'm,
Let me finish. What I'm talking about is the mainstream media getting in bed with the government. And you mentioned the BBC. You said you don't look at American media, which is great. But the BBC themselves condemn themselves for their own actions in the Iraq War by stifling independent voices and promoting propaganda. Those are literally the terminology that was used. So that's my problem. That's my issue.
okay, well, two things. Number
Can
one,
I
the
say something
BBC
really
is,
fast? There really wasn't a counter narrative at that time. We didn't really have the
no, there
internet that we do
was.
today. Well,
Yeah, but there was
there
the
was,
counter
but it was like
narrative.
in
In the
colleges, it was
mainstream?
not mainstream.
In the
It
mainstream,
had no
Sadie.
chance
In
of
mainstream
making
counter
it to
narrative,
mainstream because
no, but
the
it was
top
real hard
news
to
companies,
ignore.
they really did control the world. They got the narrative out. There was no counter narrative to that back then.
At the
2004.
mainstream level, Sadie, is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, maybe I'm just not looking at it like clearly because, like, to me, and maybe it's just because my news sources have never fully been mainstream. I have always, at that time I was listening to a lot more left leaning. I mean, I think that I got a majority of my news from The Daily Show. But
During the
that,
2004 during the Iraq War?
yeah,
In the lead up to the Iraq War, you were looking at the Daily Show?
yeah.
Yeah, that was very popular then.
But what
I
I'm
mean,
saying is when you mentioned I don't look at American media, I'm looking at the BBC.
No, I said back then that I did pay attention to a lot of American media.
Okay.
That at that time I was definitely listening to a lot more. Well, I guess when I say American media, I would say The Daily Show because I've always been a big Jon Stewart fan.
Right. So
Um,
6 o'clock, the evening news when Americans are watching after dinner, right? That's what
uh-huh.
that's what I'm talking about. That media was univocal about Iraq, whether it was CNN,
oh,
MSNBC,
absolutely.
Fox News. We agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I like I said, maybe
Okay.
I'm looking at it just from my own like sphere of people who just have never really been inclined to trust the news and have always thought things out from other places. So maybe I'm just ignorant to the fact that you guys really were being spoon-fed this. Maybe
Well,
I'm just
it's not you
ignorant.
guys. It's mainstream media from the BBC to NBC to CNN to Fox News. That's the argument. The argument is those forums were not platforming independent or dissenting commentary.
It's very true. Yeah, I can remember very distinctly. Now, mind you, I was very young when that conflict started. I think I was like 10. Jesus.
Oh my
I'm just
God, I'm
thinking
so
about how
old.
long it's been. I
Oh
was a
my God, I'm
child
so
when this
old.
started.
I'm
uh,
so old. Oh my God, I'm so old. Sorry. I'm so old.
oh God, I'm just. I remember very distinctly because, I mean, obviously, I think after watching the trauma of what happened on 9/11,
Yeah.
I was kind of glued to the TV despite myself.
Yeah.
And the only sources I heard it all from any source, and my parents are one's very conservative, the other is very, very left wing. And they watched pretty much everybody, and it was both sides just going, yep, march right to war. We
Yep.
need to kill these people.
Yep.
Now, mind you, the liberals said it in a nicer way.
More humane.
But, yeah, but a bomb with But a bomb with a gay rights matter flag is still a bomb. I'm sorry.
DJ, because we got to land the plane. This has been a good discussion. See, this is what we do in Middle America, dear listener. All right, DJ. I promise I'm going to get to you, Sadie. DJ, go ahead. What were you going to say? DJ going once. DJ, get your mic off mute, bitch.
Did we lose DJ?
Look.
Oh God, I'm gonna feel really bad.
No, don't feel bad. I don't feel bad for DJ. He's gonna call me right after this anyway. He's gone.
No, but it's a good talk.
We got rid of him. Okay, go ahead, Sadie. He'll be back. Don't worry. Go ahead, Sadie. You're up.
What I was gonna say about rewinding and going back to Rivers' observation about military.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. But you lost your turn.
I
bitch.
apologize.
Sadie,
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Sadie's up, and then we'll let you in. Then we'll land the plane. Go ahead. Go back to Riv's original point, Sadie.
Okay, two things. Number one, there's the idea of mutual exclusivity. Like, you feel that if the Ukrainians are holding their own, then they don't need any outside help, which I don't know that I can agree with, because it's like,
well, that's not true. I don't think if Ukrainians are holding their own that they don't need outside help. What I'm saying is, if the Ukrainians are holding their own to the degree that these people say that they are, and that they're dealing with the full might of the Russian military and holding their own to the degree that people say they are, then as the Call of Duty bullshit narrative is, then they don't need $2 billion from me. That's my specific argument. Go ahead.
well, I think that there's a lot of chest thumping, absolutely, because that's what happens in wars and invasions. Is there's always going to be chest thumping. I think that the Ukrainian forces are at least holding their own. I don't necessarily think that they're winning.
Can I ask you why you think that?
Because if they weren't holding their own, it wouldn't have lasted as long as it did, or as long as it has.
Do you know how big Ukraine is?
I do know how big. Yeah, well, I mean, I do, but I also know what the supposed Russian forces are. And that's also my thought as far as the no-fly zone and as far as the,
So wait, can you
Russian.
explain to me what the Russian forces are then? I'm not trying to be combative. I'm just trying to understand.
No.
Questions. These are good questions.
No, they're absolutely good questions. I'm talking about like the convoys. I'm talking about the tanks. And I'm talking about, and I am first one to admit that I am not an expert in any way, shape, or form when it comes to military. I'm not. But I guess as somebody who's not experienced with military but uses deductive reasoning, if the Russian forces were that had all of that might, it would have been over way sooner. So obviously there has to be some
way that you could make. I mean, if you know how big Ukraine is, the only way to make that over quick is probably nuclear weapons. There's no way to cover that kind of ground, even in a few weeks. It's such a massive country.
I am posting right now. This is from Statista.com. I'm posting right now a comparison between Russian military capabilities and NATO's capabilities. So not
okay, but NATO's not in there. But NATO is.
Hold on, Sadie,
is NATO in there?
Sadie, I'm just trying to give you a scale, right? So NATO is a collection of 30 countries. So when you look at Russian capabilities in comparison to 30 other countries, it'll give you the scale pertinent to their conflict with Ukraine. The other thing about Ukraine,
but that's not what.
The other thing about Ukraine is that there are pro-Russian segments in Ukraine, some pro-Russian segments in Odessa, and obviously the Donbass. So it's not like he can just go in there and just wreck shop. He's got to be very surgical in where he's going and what he's trying to accomplish. Thirdly,
can I
go? Yeah, go ahead. I'll shut up. Go ahead, DJ.
Well, I want to speak to that for a second, because you know what? When we went to Iraq, I was part of that terrible debacle. And when we went into Iraq, the first thing they did was they knocked out the power. Internet wasn't such a thing there, but water. They knocked out the water, which is wound up killing, a lot of people. Because the first thing that you do when you fight like Americans do is you come in You take out their ability to live. You take out their water. If you don't have running water, if you don't have power to keep your food cold in a fridge, for instance, I mean, this is what happens. Like it just causes a lot of suffering and death really fast. So when Putin went into Ukraine, that was a thing. Like I'm seeing a lot of people that I follow. They're putting up daily videos of what's going on. They're giving up they don't like Russia, obviously, but they still have the internet. They still have power. This is unheard of. So there must be a different reason for him going into these countries, right? It's like not that he wants to. If you want to cause the massive amount of suffering and death, is you take out the power and the and the water, and he hasn't done that. I'm not saying that I agree with Putin but what he's doing, but I'm just saying the tactics that he's employing is a lot less harsh than what we do when we go into countries. But go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? Have you ever read The Art of War?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so you know that like Sun Tzu breaks down in The Art of War, when you're going to war against different opponents, you determine ahead of time what it is what your objective is. So our objective in Iraq was just fuckery. I mean, really, it was fuckery and oil.
That's not an objective. That's not. What does fuckery mean then?
Yeah, that's not an objective, Sadie.
I believe the term that you mean is regime change.
Okay.
Yeah, but like
Rivers got my back. Rivers got my back. We went in primarily, in my opinion, for oil, and also to try to establish ourselves within the region. That I think is fuckery, but there was not, with the exception of oil, there was nothing in that region that was really useful to us. Now, Ukraine, on the other hand,
we killed 1 million Iraqis.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so what do you think Russia's objective is then, Sadie?
Okay,
you don't think it's regime change then?
Well, I mean, I think that it's regime change in the sense that they want to pull it back into the Soviet Union, or Russia.
Oh,
but part of the reason why they want to do that is because it's incredibly rich in resources. Like, you're not going to go shock and awe into an area that is incredibly rich in resources, because then you're just screwing yourself.
Why not take out the water then?
Because again, that is going to diminish your later capabilities when it comes to resources.
Why?
Because Ukrainian wheat is a major commodity. Ukrainian wheat is a major commodity. And if you start taking out water, if you start taking out irrigation systems, then you're going to have to rebuild those irrigation systems.
So then let me ask you something. If they make wheat and sunflowers, which is one of their major exports, why do we give a shit as Americans? Why do we send over billions of dollars? Why are we risking World War III over this country that produces wheat and sunflowers? Please explain that to me.
Well, there's also natural gas and other untapped resources that I'm sure Europe wants to have access to. And
so Europe
wants to have one thing that I might want to mention that they have, if I remember correctly. Don't they have one of the largest deposits of uranium in that country?
Uranium?
If I remember correctly, isn't that one of their big things?
But shale gas is everywhere, pretty much, if you want to dig for it, right? I mean, in the United States, we are the leading energy producer in the world.
Yes,
right, but Ukraine also
the military uses most of it.
So what's the U.S. justification for involvement, Sadie? Why are we getting involved in this skirmish between Ukraine and Russia?
Because of Putin. Like, basically, I think that the U.S. and the rest of the world has a fear that Putin isn't going to stop in the Ukraine. That is the
question about that, though? I really want to press you on this because this is very important. In the world of 2022, with social media, which is such a powerful tool that dictators of past would have just, they would have a wet dream thinking about the power that they could have with social media and being able to censor information. So we have the entire United States just worked up in a frenzy, right, about the border between Russia and Ukraine. and we're willing to send, billions of dollars of weapons into this country, knowing that we're not even actually going to help protect these people. We're just going to send them the weapons so that they can fight and die. Because I'll tell you right now, Russia is winning the war, and these people are going to get slaughtered. They have no chance. They own the skies. When 100%. You own this is not like we're fighting against the Mujahideen. They own the skies. I've seen videos of these guys going in. Maybe you watched a lot of these stupid, mainstream media news segments where they're talking about these people are going over, and it's so glorious. They're going over to Ukraine to fight, and these guys have like a wife and kids, and they're going to fucking Ukraine, and they're going in there, and where Russia owns the skies. And what happened was, and I've seen a lot of the videos, these guys are going in, and they're just getting fucking rocked. I'm sorry, pardon my French. They have no chance in hell. This is not like you're fighting, like I said, the Mujahideen in Iraq. It's not the same thing. These people own the sky. They have artillery. They are near peer enemies.
Mujahideen were very good fighters. Stop sleeping on my man.
I'm not saying that they were not courageous people.
I know what you're saying.
Like artillery.
I know what you're saying.
And missiles and air superiority. This is a whole nother thing. If you're like, remember that, like the Canadian sniper, he's going into the Ukraine. The Canadian sniper. If there was a sniper in Ukraine, these guys would have drones with infrared scopes. They could see this person in a building. They would just level the building. This is a whole other type of warfare.
Yeah, he died in 24 hours, guys.
I mean, come on. This is not even a question. This is a different thing.
I want to let you answer. I want to post something though to buttress DJ's point. Foreign fighters in Ukraine await weapons in the chaos of war. That is by the AP 15 March. So you got these guys doing this jihadi tourism, and they show up and they don't even have. These guys are not even as put together as ISIS. When you joined ISIS back in the day, you'd get off the plane, they'd give you Al-Quran and a AK-47, and they'd send you to one of their little silly camps where they jump over a couple ropes, and then off you go. I mean, at least you were.
Hey, as long as you got a Quran, man.
SubhanAllah. But at least you were kitted out. These people are going over there, and the AP is reporting this, that they don't even have weapons.
No, they have to bring their own.
10 rounds.
Well, I mean, again, this is why war tourism doesn't make any sense to me, but that's neither here nor there.
But what I'm saying is, if they were winning, if you want to talk about incompetence, Riv, because you've been a little bit quiet, you were talking about the Russian incompetence, which I disagree with, but we'll go with it.
Oh gosh,
I think that's a real fatal mistake. But if you're talking about incompetence, I mean, both of you. You got these people, you're obviously doing the propaganda to recruit people from all these other countries to come do jihad, and they're not even as organized as ISIS was.
They have a death wish.
That's a problem.
If you're going over there with a family and kids, and you're going to go over to the other side of the world to fight this fucking bullshit war, I mean, you have a death wish.
I don't think so. DJ, if you believe that you're fighting an enemy that's got cardboard in their tanks and can't get the convoy straight, I don't think they have a death wish. I think if they knew you're going up against folks that are going to infrared your building and fucking fuck you up the minute you show up there, I think you'd have a lot less willing participants. That's part of my problem with this narrative.
Well, you got a lot of guys that have been like 4, 5, 6 times over there, right? When we're talking about the old war on terror,
right?
This is all they know. And this is what these guys are signing up for because they don't know anything else.
Riv, go ahead.
There are people like that.
Oh, we know
so,
that.
There are.
So the thing is, and I'm not saying that. What I'm not saying is that both sides are not showing some levels of incompetence here and there. And obviously, again, I'm going to say that these war tourists, these guys that are running over there, and I don't mean to disrespect them. Obviously, if they're going to die, that's awful, and I don't want them to die. Let me just put that out right up front. But
I think we're all in agreement there.
If you're running off to a country to go fight a war, I can't say that I would blame the Ukrainians for not, for not prioritizing you first. They're going to probably prioritize their own army first before anyone else. Because again,
they have
their armies would be the one.
When you don't control the skies, what happens is that you're not going to get any resupply. So what these guys are doing is they're surrounding the big cities, and they're just going to starve them out. Now, these people talking about sending MiGs over there, that's the craziest shit I've ever heard in my life. You're going to send 29 MiGs over there like it's going to do anything? Russia's got Su-35s, they got Su-57s, only 12. But they're just on another level. Sending over some old Soviet-era MiG-29s is not – first of all, how are you going to get them in the country? And then how are you going to get them in the country where they don't look at us like we're helping them?
Who's going to transport said MiGs from USA to Ukraine?
They're just going to start lighting up Poland airfields. You want to start a world war? That's the way to do it. So I got to say one more thing. I was at work the other day. I think I told you, Vin, last week. And these people were talking about like signing a petition for the EU to establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. I'm at work. I'm on Microsoft Teams, and I'm seeing people share this shit. I'm like, oh, I'm on the phone, my good buddy of mine. And I'm like, dude, oh my god, like these people are advocating for starting World War III in Microsoft Teams chat. This is the craziest shit I've ever seen in my life. Because they have no idea what they're talking about. And like that thing with Tucker tonight, when you're talking about that lady coming on there, like literally not knowing her ass from a hole in the ground.
Oh my
She's
God.
on the fucking Foreign Relations Committee.
Terrifying.
She's on the. This is what when you say that I'm screaming at you, Vin. It's funny. I'm not screaming, but I'm kind of in a way. I'm like just talking, but like I'm scared. Like these people are in these fucking positions of power, and they're making these decisions about what we're going to do. Like what the fuck is going on? They don't even understand the ramifications of what they're advocating.
I can plainly agree with you, man, in that particular case, for sure. Because any establishment of a no-fly zone, any attempts to essentially involve ourselves further than we already have, and honestly, considering some of the things that Putin has said about sanctions being in his view, an act of direct war on Russia. Well, I mean, we might already, I hate to say it, already be at a point where we might be at a point of no return where we just got to be like,
I agree with you.
Let them have Ukraine. Let them just have the whole country. I don't care how badly it goes to Ukraine. And I'm not saying that because I think that's right.
Okay,
I'm sorry?
Sadie's been very patient. Sadie's been very patient. So we're swinging around back to her. DJ, if you got to go, love you, man. But we got to let Sadie talk now. Go ahead, Sadie.
Okay, so just a thought on what has been labeled war tourists. Just from personal situation. There are guys that just truly feel that democracy in the Ukraine is a representation of democracy throughout. And so they feel that what they're doing is right. They have to take their own equipment. Like that is just blatant. And in theory, you can sign up through the Ukrainian embassy, but the wait list is backlogged and they're not really taking applications. So guys are getting their equipment and they're just going over, and Poland's letting them do it. So they're going into Poland and then they're going into Ukraine. And these guys all have their own reasons. I think that DJ was correct in saying that there are some guys that just don't. That's just what they do. There's a song that was written by Steve Earle called The Mercenary Song. And, I think it's worth listening to because I think it really does kind of describe that mentality. I can't pull it up because I'm on my phone, but there's basically a line in it about doing what you do best. And, it's about going to war basically for, just mercenary reasons. I think that there are guys that do that. I think that there are guys that just can't stop because they've gotten into that mode and they can't stop. I also think that there are guys who've been removed from it for decades who now look at it, especially if they've been involved in paying attention to geopolitical activities across the world, that feel that stopping Russia in the Ukraine is imperative because Russia won't just stop with you. They feel that Putin will continue to push into other countries and that it is an inevitability if you don't stop him now that he is going to continue to do things like attack Ukraine, attack Georgia, attack, other countries And so it has to be stopped. I don't know that I would say that they're war tourists, because I think that most of the men who actually have made it a decision to do this know exactly what it is that they're doing. And
Well,
that's not tourism. That's basically saying, okay, I'm going to put my ass on the line, and I know that I can get real fucked up or real dead, but I feel that it is within me. I feel it's the right thing to do.
I think
Oh,
So
Wally served in Kandahar in the Royal Canadian Regiment. So I definitely think that applies to him. But there's a whole host of folks who that doesn't apply to. Secondly, hold on. Secondly, I got a serious problem with the idea that we can go after Putin for, he's not going to stop, when he's made it clear what would activate him and what would deactivate him. He said it a bunch of times over years. Now, he's never attacked a nation that hasn't flirted with NATO or doesn't have Russians being severely attacked. Crimea, we know what happened in Crimea. The Crimean government said, we're not going to give our government over to Nazis. Their own government says, as the representative government of the Crimean people, we don't want to give our government over to Nazis. So
which is kind of,
hold on, let me finish, because I let you finish. I have a hard time with this concept that the Ukrainians are on the side of democracy and that their folks are trying to stop the spread of Vladimir Putin, when Georgia, when again, we're not taking into account joining NATO is joining a hostile alliance that will give you access to an unlimited amount of high-tech weapons that can reach Moscow in 5 minutes. And to ask a guy like that, or to ask an entire country to be cool with that, to me is hypocritical, especially coming from the United States, who, when the Monroe Doctrine was tested by Khrushchev, we almost started World War III with the Cuban Missile Crisis.
While I agree with you, Vin, I should. Okay.
Really fast.
Go ahead.
Okay. So it's similar to like what he's saying, like, when he says that we can hit Moscow in 5 minutes. So the whole world has changed as far as warfare in the last, 5 years. Hypersonic weapons, which means Mach 5 plus, cruise missiles that are low flying, under the radar. They can go very, very fast, and there's really nothing you can do about it, which is why our carriers are very sitting ducks today, where we have to sit very, very far away, like we used to be able to do against, China. We have to stay far away from China now because our carrier group has to, because of the fact that they have these missiles. So the whole world has changed because of that. And for us to be able to say that we can have Ukraine join NATO, which is on their border. This is like Mexico. It's like Russia decides to have a military alliance with Mexico. We're going to put missile systems within Mexico that can hit DC in 5 minutes. Now, DC would flip out and lose their mind. We'd go to war instantly if they had that kind of threat. And that's basically what we're asking of them. And the entire time, Russia's been saying the same thing. Like, hey, look, you cannot, Ukraine needs to be a buffer zone. It needs to be neutral. And I think that's fair. And I totally agree with Colonel Douglas McGregor, who I think is the only voice of reason out there right now. I would recommend those that don't know who he is to listen to what he says, because he talks about this in great detail and how they've been talking about this since the 90s. And NATO has just grown and grown and grown eastward. And, this is kind of part and parcel to what you see what happens with defense contractors and munitions manufacturers. Like, these people kind of get in our capitalist and late stage capitalist society. And Vin will love this because he thinks I'm a pure capitalist, right?
Come to the bright side, my brother.
I am part. I understand that part.
Read some Marx. Go ahead.
Well, these companies in late stage capitalism have a control over our politicians, right? So our politicians, they survive off of, being able to take in lobbyists and their money to be able to get reelected. So McGregor talks about this. If you look into his videos, he talks about how it's what they do. They show up. If you are lucky enough to get AOC is a perfect example, right? If you're lucky enough to get in this club, well, if you want to stay in this club, you have to play the game. Play the game is basically, okay, there's this building over there full of lobbyists, and you have to get your ass in there if you want to get reelected, and that's the game. And when you talk about people making policy influenced by people that make arms, arms is a huge, huge industry, just like big pharma, as we've all learned in the last couple of years, with the all the different shots and all the money that makes. Same thing with the arms. So they influence policy, which is so crazy to think about for an average American, right? Like, are you serious? Like, these arms manufacturers influence politicians, policy to maybe go to war? Yeah, it's that stupid. That's the world we live in. And these people want to go to war. When you listen to Lindsey Graham, or that lady that was on Tucker tonight, doesn't even know what a no-fly zone is. It's just
unbelievable,
ridiculous. These people want to go to war.
Okay,
they don't have the interests of the American people at heart. That's all I'm going to say.
Riv, you're up. You're up, Riv.
Okay, so what was I about to say? Give me a second to recollect my thoughts here.
We were talking about accumulating weapons at the border of Russia and asking them to just deal with it.
Now, I agree with you definitely as far as the NATO thing. That is obviously a step too far for Putin. Here's kind of my
How
crazy
would you feel about it, though, if your country was bordered by that?
Oh, no, absolutely. Putin. I understand it completely.
Okay.
I'm not disagreeing with that at all.
Okay.
My question mainly has to do with other Slavic countries at this point.
Okay.
Because here is my question. Say we just agree, pull away from Ukraine completely, cut them off, say you're on your own. Whatever happens from this point forward, you have no backing. You have to agree to whatever this guy says. Now, here is my question, because obviously he doesn't want NATO anywhere near his borders. He already has quite a few neighbors who are in NATO.
Yeah.
Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. There's Turkey, which is not technically on his border, but pretty close.
Pretty damn close.
And I would say then, because here's the problem that I see coming if we just absolutely give in. And this is kind of where my mind goes when I think, why are we backing this? And I think it has to do with, and this is the optimistic side of me. The pessimistic side of me just thinks this is just a way to weaken Russia. And that's a side that I think is right. And that's the side that I agree with for the most part. My optimistic side that says that we give even half of a shit about the people that we have brought into NATO is that if we agree to this, Putin might ask for something else. Like, say, I want a complete buffer between NATO and me. That means you have to get Poland out of here. You have to get Estonia. You have to get Latvia. You have to get Lithuania, and you have to remove Turkey. Any of these nations that are this close to me, I want as a neutral buffer state, and I want them demilitarized, because that's the other thing that he said about specifically Ukraine. He wants it demilitarized too. He wants them to have no way to build a military again.
He didn't say that. What he said
was
he wanted them to
discontinue.
No, he said he wanted them to discontinue offensive procedures against him. He left defensive open, so that's not true.
Again, a thing similar to
killing all the people that have the ability to do any type of military action against Russia on that border. But what he's saying is that in Turkey, you got demilitarized Turkey. I mean, the only one that's being the most aggressive here is NATO. And that's just the truth.
I'm just asking.
Riff, what's your historical precedent for saying, because we keep going back to Putin, as if this is some psychological tick that Putin has, when all of Russia has had this problem for 30 years?
No. I'm not saying this is a psychological tick. I'm just proposing a hypothetical. A question that I think has to be asked.
Well, hold on.
Because I think it's a question that should be asked.
I agree, and I'm going to let you ask the question, but what I'm saying is, can we frame this as a Russian concern instead of a Putin concern? because the
Okay.
Russians were concerned about this long before Putin took office. Can we agree with that?
No, I'm agreeing with you there.
Okay, so
I'm
it's a
stating
Russian,
Hey,
it's a
the
Russian
Russian
concern.
government. All right,
The
I'm going to say
Russian
this
people.
as the Russian government. Okay, the
Time
Russian
out for a
people.
second.
Okay, go ahead.
Time out for a second. If I lose you guys, it was really lovely talking to you. I'm going to hang on for as long as possible, but my phone's about to die. So
Yes, this is
go on with the discussion.
This is the evolution of our show, dear listener. Go ahead, Riv.
So, okay, let's frame this from the Russian people's perspective, because they don't want Ukraine in NATO, right? They likely, from my understanding, also don't want any NATO countries on their border. That would include Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, probably Turkey too. Just because Turkey's pretty darn close, and the Black Sea Fleet can't really leave the Black Sea. At least from my understanding, anyway, based on the treaty that the Russian government has with NATO. They can't leave the Black Sea and cross through Turkish waters. So I would assume that they would probably want them out of NATO too, right? Now, here's
Has he demanded
that
that?
optimistic side of me thinking, why would we want to back Ukraine in this? My question is, of those nations that are already in NATO, would they not consider it perhaps concerning based on their histories with Russia specifically? Because, and Vin, you played that documentary a little bit ago, so you brought up history with Ukraine. Poland has a pretty bad history with Russia and all of its neighbors. Same for Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. They have pretty negative histories, especially with the Soviet Union. Because when Poland got invaded by the Nazis, the Soviets rolled in too at the same time. Then, when the Nazis got defeated, they essentially had their legitimate government at the time removed by force by the Soviet Union, and a communist government installed in its stead. Poland has a deep dislike of Russia, which is why they joined NATO in the first place. Because, and I'm saying this from their sovereign point of view, they don't trust Russia. And I hate to say it, I kind of can see why, based on their various histories of invasions from the Russian Empire in the past, the Soviet Union afterwards, and the Russian Federation's general trouble with Polish sovereignty. They seem to not really like them too much.
Okay, after the Berlin Wall fell, how much aggression have the Russians displayed toward the Poles?
I'd have to do a little bit more reading, but you have to remember that they amass troops on their border pretty often, based on exercises, but we know what that really means usually. An exercise on a border usually is a threat.
Okay, get me the direct acts of aggression since the fall of the Berlin Wall against the Polish people from the Russians, because that's an argument against Germany. It's also an argument against Ukraine, right? Because the Ukrainians massacred a bunch of Poles, so did the Germans, right? The Germans almost eliminated all Jews from Poland.
Can
right? So they almost single-digited the Jewish population over there. So what we're talking about is overarching history. What I want to talk about is, since Gorbachev agreed, since the Berlin Wall fell down, right? What have been the overt acts of aggression that the Russian people have done against all of these states to justify surrounding them with a limitless munitions and armory?
All right, Vin, fair enough. I don't have an answer on what exactly Russia has done to make Poland not trust the current Russian Federation.
If you want my opinion, I agree. I think America should completely pull out of NATO. I don't think we should be part of NATO at all. And I think we should pull back.
All right.
I think, as Gorbachev said, our expansion, the 14 nations we expanded to, was against the spirit of the discussions that we had together in those accords. That's what Gorbachev said. So I think we should go back and honor that.
Well, if that's the case, I mean, I'm personally of the opinion that NATO should have been dissolved the second the Soviet Union fell. I mean, completely dissolved. Shouldn't have existed.
Right. We're in agreement, right? That's Berlin Wall, right?
Now, however,
Berlin Wall, right?
That's not the history we live in. That's not the world we live in. That's the world of the perfect future where nothing bad happened, where I can't remember the guy that said it. You know, the guy that said the end of history happened when communism was defeated.
Unbelievable.
That guy has been proven wrong repeatedly, and I kind of wish I could rub that in his face just a little bit.
All right, final thoughts, guys. Let's start this way. So, Riv, give your final thoughts.
All right, final thoughts. God be with the civilians of the Ukraine. They really need it right now.
Yeah.
Because, boy, things are not looking very well for them. The other thing that I would say is, please just, guys, come to the table. Make it easy. Do not.
So you you disagree with the representative who wouldn't say it would be better for the Ukrainians to have peace instead of war. You believe it'd be better.
I called her a moron in chat. I don't know if you saw that. I said outright, that's a foolish decision.
I just wanted it. I just wanted it on record. Yeah. And you've got Ukrainian family, right?
Friends, I have family in Poland, Ukraine. Pretty much, I'm about as Slavic as it can get. There's a very good reason why my family fled Europe right around World War I and World War II, respectively. We did not feel safe.
Yeah, so
and
this is
luckily we got a little bit. We did get safe, luckily, but still, this is just kind of a repeat of the same history my grandma told me about. And honestly, it's kind of depressing that it just won't stop.
Here we are in 2022. Unbelievable. Okay. Sadie's still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Sadie, you're up.
I think. Oh, no, I was going to commiserate with River because that's actually, on my father's side, probably about as Slavic as it can get. And my great-grandfather came over and renounced his Jewish heritage because he left, because he was a Jew.
He came
so
here?
Anyway, he came to America from Poland. He was a Polish Jew, and he came to America and gave up his religion and his heritage. And my father's side of the family is all from Russia and Poland and the Prussian border. So commiserating with River because I know that family story.
Wow.
I think that when you talk, it's kind of weird. My cousin is now on her Jewish journey, trying to reconnect with that part of our family.
That
when you
makes a lot of sense now.
My dislike of Russia and Putin and everything that's going on. I mean, like generationally from my father, he is so consumed by it because and a lot of it is basically family history and his understanding. But anyway, what you were saying about Crimea, one of the things that I think is really important to understand or to make a mention of, because I know everybody talks about the Nazis and I'm not disputing that in any way, shape, or form, but there is also looking at the fact that the Tartars in Crimea are being and in Russia, the Tartar population is a targeted group. The LGBTQ community is a targeted group. So it's both sides are bad. Both sides don't have good, there are bad things. I'm not disputing that. But I think it's worth mentioning. I really hope at this point that I pray for the Ukrainian people, and I also pray for the Russian people, because I think that, in what's happening, a lot of people aren't paying attention to the fact that there are so many people, young people in Russia, who don't agree with what's going on. And those people, their lives are in danger. Legitimately. My niece has a friend that she has been pen pals with since she was a little girl in Russia. And the girl is a lesbian and she lives in fear for her life. So my heart goes out to both. And I believe that Zelensky is going to give up NATO. I think that the EU membership is going to be the next major hurdle, because I think that the Ukrainian people do overwhelmingly want to be a part of the EU. So I guess we'll see what happens with that.
Before you go, I know I said final thoughts, but before you go, what do you think Zelensky is going to do about Crimea?
Not
what you think he should do, but what do you think he will do?
I think he's going to have to give it up. I don't see any way that he won't have to give it up. I think that it would be lovely to think that he can reclaim it, but that's one of those things that, like, I've had conversations with my father about, because back in 2014 when it happened, and my husband at the time was actually living in Little Odessa, and so he was surrounded by Russians. And, basically the way they presented it, and even my father said, it's a predominantly Russian territory. Crimea. And if they want to go back to them, Crimea has always been predominantly Russian. And if they want to go back to Russia, then just fucking hack the thumb off and save the hand.
Do you contest the 96% we want to go back vote in, was it 16 or 17? Do you contest those results, or do you think that pretty much represents the Crimean sentiment about going back to Russia?
Do I think the Crimeans want to go back to Russia?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
To the degree of 96%, I don't know if I think that it's 96%, but I do think it's an overwhelming majority.
Okay.
Like, okay. I do believe that it's an overwhelming majority, but I think that it's important to recognize the fact that, the Russians in Crimea and the way that they're treating the Tartars is seriously sketch. I mean, they're not and with hugs and kisses. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of caveats that back in 2014,
Oh no. What's happened to us last time?
Oh dear. I mean, she did say that her phone was having some issues.
Yeah. DJ, you still here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, give us your final thoughts, bitch.
All right, bitch. Well, the main thing is, I will say, I follow people that are in Russia. I follow people that are in Ukraine. And I think that people need to understand this if they've never been in a war zone, or they start getting involved in this geopolitical bullshit on the other side of the world and having an opinion about what's going on the other side of the world. People are people for the most part. The people that are in these countries do not represent their government. The fucked up part about Russia, and there is a big difference between, the United States and Russia. You have to serve in the military in Russia. So you have to go in. And if you go into the military, you understand that you have to follow orders because, you don't want to get shot, because it's part of being in the military. And then the people that don't even have the option to protest against what's going on. So you have to take that into consideration when you try to judge the Russian people. Yeah. These sanctions against the Russian people are fucking bullshit. Okay? These are families just like you and me. They have kids. They have families out there trying to destroy their currency and being, their ability to thrive. And I will say, I wish I could pull up the channel that I've been following. It's this really cool Russian couple. They have a couple kids, and they've been going around and making YouTube videos about, what does energy cost? What does groceries cost? They take the camera into the store, they film it, they show people what the conversion from rubles to dollars is. They can show you how much things cost. Wow. And it's been pretty cool. It shows a human element to their side, and it's just something that's been completely erased from what you see in the media.
What's the name of that channel?
I'll have to pull it up, and I'll send it to you later, man.
Yeah, text it to me. I'll add that in the postscript, guys.
Cool.
Yeah, hey, Vin, can you do me a favor? And you have my Twitter. Can you just go ahead and DM me that? That way I can take a look at it myself, because I might not check back on this vid.
100%. 100%. And you did great, by the way, Riv.
I appreciate it.
You rocked that shit. You did really, really well. Go ahead, DJ. I'm sorry I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, that's the main thing is that just to think about people as people, and that, the government is not the people. And we probably all here in America, probably agree with that too, because I don't agree with the actions of my government and the stupid decisions that they make. It's the same thing all around the world. How the hell are you going to raise a family? And you understand, Vin. You're raising a family. You get involved in the politics of this bullshit, but you really don't have the time to really get into it. Like maybe a purist would. We have a family we have to take care of. We are just trying to make ends meet and feed our kids and raise them right. So I think it's important to think about that human element of all of this. But as far as what you hear in the media, I would say this, like, man, and I think you're starting to see this too, Vin. I've been talking to you this since 2019. The power of social media is staggering. It is scary what they can do. When you think about the younger generation coming in and growing up into having a phone in their hand that can literally, if without parental supervision, can literally take their mind wherever they choose. And I see that a lot. I think that has a lot to do with the infighting we see here in the U.S. We don't even teach like civics anymore in this country. We don't even teach how government works. We teach all these other things that make us infight. And I think a lot of this, and I think we talked this about in the past, Vin, a lot of what we see here is just to keep us infighting so they can keep doing what they're doing without any repercussions.
Facts.
Kind of a high level approach to it, but it's kind of is what's going on. It's turn on the news, man. Turn on MSNBC. Turn on. I don't think there's any, like, in mainstream press. I don't think there's any actual journalists that make it through anymore, except maybe Tucker. And I know you don't agree with him all the time, and maybe I don't either. But who's out there like holding a politician to task like we saw today?
Yeah,
I don't see that.
Yeah, I'll give it to him. I'll give it to him.
Yeah, I mean, you don't have to like the guy, but I mean, he's what is journalism? It's calling these people, asking them questions. And now I
did not know that Hannity and the rest of those people are supporting no-fly zones.
Dude,
holy shit!
I couldn't believe it.
Were you shocked at that, River? Did you know that?
Oh God, I have been well aware. Honestly, it's been kind of having been reading, like, essentially these lists of things that have been going on. Oh Lord, whenever I hear some takes, I just go, how is this person still considered relevant again?
Unbelievable.
It's kind of a sad state of affairs when
it's comical.
It's unbelievable.
You see that happening, and then you see the other side of it. MSNBC, like, what's her name?
Maddow.
Everything's racial. Everything, somehow they always conform it to the lens of racism. Like, what?
We're doomed. All right.
We're doomed.
All right.
Well, let's hope not. I'm definitely hoping Ragnarok isn't around the corner.
All right. Well, my final thought, and I got to keep it short just to be fair to everybody else. That's the Dan Shekau's family. They're on YouTube. I put the link in the chat. I'll do it again. I can't wait to watch them because you can. I really, that's been a real concern of mine, is that Russia, when we hear about Ukraine, we hear about kids, we hear about moms, and we should. But anytime we hear about Russia, all we hear about is Putin. And hard stop. And so looking at that family for as long as YouTube will allow them, I'm very excited to be able to do that, because there are military ramifications to these sanctions. I mean, it's been said over and over again that sanctions themselves are an act of war. That's
Ron Paul said that.
The push to China from Russia, us giving those folks an instigation to create their own bloc, their own economic and military ecosystem, is not good for the Western world. And so heavy sanctions end up doing that. We're going to be talking about that later on. But for me, I think this is the way forward, guys. We're all looking at the same media. Everybody's looking at this from, Riv's got family, Sadie had family, I've got certain experiences, and then obviously DJ had certain experiences. We all get together and we talk rationally. We disagree stridently, but we disagree agreeably and rationally. I think everybody did a great job of giving other people time to speak, and then Riv obviously clearly articulated their position. So did Sadie. Obviously, she's not here. Her phone died. And DJ, I never like to give him any credit, but obviously DJ was able to succinctly communicate his position as well. And this is what we got to do, guys. We can no longer leave it up to these folks in the media, because these motherfuckers are talking about fucking no-fly zones and the cost of freedom, all that shit, knowing full well that they're not going to suffer the ramifications of it. Or you know what? They don't even see. That's the problem. She doesn't even know that she may very well suffer the ramifications of it.
Dude.
And you know what? One thing to definitely point out, because DJ, I know that we probably have at least somewhat of a disagreement here. I'm glad that we can actually have a conversation, because I got to tell you, having watched some other people having actual debates on this, even people outside of the mainstream media. Yeah. There was this one debate between, I think the streamers are Destiny and Haas. I wish I could.
I know who they are.
And it literally just devolved into a screaming match where Haas would just keep screaming and insulting people, and Destiny just kept clipping to get the guy angrier. It didn't produce anything other than two dudes having a shouting match, and it didn't provide any information. And that's what I'd rather have if I'm going to hear a debate. I'd rather get new information so I can maybe alter my opinion from one area to the next, and maybe come to a conclusion that's helpful.
Really good job, guys. Really good job. And that's what you could. This is the evolution of Middle America, bitches. This is where we're going. But honestly, guys, really appreciated. Look, anybody can participate in these discussions. All you got to do is click the link and jump on and share your opinion. The only rule is just be respectful, like what we saw with your teammates today. Having said that, guys, we're going to get out of here. DJ, you spend way too much time, bro, because I know you have a regular human schedule. You're going to have to wake up in the morning and go to work like a normie. So
I will pay for it. That's okay, though.
You will pay for it. I'm a YouTuber, so I'll probably wake up.
The only reason I agreed was I have a day off.
I'm going to wake up at fucking 12:30 tomorrow. So
well, it's like 2:20 by you, so yeah, you gotta go to bed too, man.
Oh Jesus, yeah, it is late.
I'm gonna play some Fortnite, and I'll get up whenever I want. All right, guys, we're out of here, bitches.
Have a good evening.
In the meantime, love your neighbor, take care of each other. Middle America, we are the media. Till next time, guys.